This conference will now be recorded.
Wonderful. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for being patient with us as we work through some of our technical difficulties. I want to welcome you all to the April 7th meeting of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners. Before we get things started, can we just first do a roll call of the commissioners present, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
Here.
Commissioner Seton,
Yes, here.
Commissioner Kelly, here, Commissioner Morgan.
Here. All right. Thank you, Renee. So could we just, all of you, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'd like to note that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners are electronically recorded, filed, and posted on board docs for the public's access. I'd also like to note that the board did meet in executive session on April 6th, that was yesterday, to discuss legal matters. We're going to have a slight shift in our agenda tonight. So first on our agenda, if you haven't heard, we had a resignation from one of our commissioners, Matt Mobilio. So we do have a motion this evening that we have to file formally to accept that resignation. So do I hear a motion this evening to accept the resignation for Commissioner Matthew Mobilio?
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second? I'll make a second. Second from Commissioner Morgan. Could I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
Yes.
Commissioner Seton,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly. Aye. Commissioner Morgan.
Yes. Motion carries. I want to thank Matt for his time on the board. Certainly he has his reasons for resignation that are his, but for the time he did spend, we are grateful. So thank you to Matt. We are going to talk later in the meeting about the process for appointment for his position and get into a little bit more detail, but I thought we should get that out of the way first so that we knew which commissioners were voting this evening as we move through. So when we get into direction and discussion items after the Green Advisory Council, we could talk as a team on how we're going to work through the appointment for the replacement of Commissioner Mobilio. So thank you everybody for that. All right, so that being said, we can move right into our meeting minutes. We have our 17th, 2021 Board of Commissioner meeting minutes. And I just asked if you're not speaking this evening, if you could just put your mic on mute so we don't have any background noise, that would be great. Thank you. All right. Were there any questions or comments from the board on the March 17th meeting minutes? Hearing none. Any questions from the public? Tracy, anything?
I don't see anything, no.
And I'll leave it open for anybody who's on the phone who might have any questions or comments on the meeting minutes. You can simply unmute your phone if you have any. Okay, hearing none, do I hear a motion this evening for approval of the March 17th, 2021 Board of Commissioner meeting minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Walk. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
Yes.
Commissioner Seton,
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. All right. We have no ordinance this evening, but we do have 3 resolutions for consideration and possible action. The first is a resolution authorizing the township manager to sign and submit the the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources Form DCNR C2P2 with regard to the rehabilitation of Wares Dam within Covered Bridge Park. Randy, would you like to report out on this one, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Commissioner Morgan. Good evening, Commissioners. So some of you, if not all of you, were actually present at the last Wares Dam workshop meeting, which was run by Michael Baker. Thought they did a tremendous job outlining the process, exactly what work is going to be occurring on the dam. One of the ideas that came out of that workshop meeting was to research and potentially apply for grants to help support the cost of construction to finish the rehabilitation of the dam itself. So we've worked with our team at Michael Baker. We have identified a DCNR C2P2 grant. C2P2, C2P2 actually stands for Community Conservation Partnerships Program. And the way DCNR operates is they have separate categories under that umbrella program. The area we are looking to apply for in the amount of $250,000 to help support this project is under the Parks Rehabilitation and Development Grant. There is a grant deadline of April 14th for this project, so this is something that had to come in front of the board here tonight in order to meet that deadline. The resolution in front of you this evening is a formality for the DCNR grant process. This just provides the township manager the right to sign the grant agreement should that grant agreement be awarded. So if DCNR does decide to award the project, obviously there's no promises, there's no guarantees. You know, we can ask for a certain amount, they may come back and offer a lesser amount. But this is a formality in their process that actually has to be attached to that grant application through their website portal. So again, just to reiterate this is simply a resolution permitting the township manager to sign the grant agreement if the grant is in fact awarded.
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, no, and knowing the how highly competitive these the grants are right now, this is great. We have the opportunity to do this, so we want to make sure that we don't have any missing pieces, so we get some good consideration. So thank you for your hard work on this so far. Any questions or comments from the board on the on this piece of the process for the grant?
Yes, I do have a question. Randy, thank you for the introduction to this grant information. Can you explain under the umbrella of the Parks Rehabilitation and Development Grant, is this specifically for a dam repair under this particular umbrella?
It's kind of, you know, it's somewhat of an unusual request through their project or their process, being that it is in the park. Did reach out to our regional advisor, which is also part of the process. He did say that because it is in a park, that the project, you know, would be considered. So yes, I mean, it is something that falls in line with their guidelines for this specific application. Again, it's a park rehabilitation grant. The dam does reside there in Covered Bridge Park and has effects on the park too. So it is something that they would consider funding and would be the most appropriate category under their grant umbrella to apply for.
So if the grant were awarded, when do you expect that? What is, I know the deadline is coming quickly to submit, but the grant process, how long? I know that there's a deadline for us to repair the bridge. I'm sorry.
So again, the deadline's April 14th, as you know. Typically, we would hear from DCNR anywhere between September and November for this project, or for any project for that matter. So this would be a fall announcement. We would not receive a grant agreement likely until the beginning of the year. But as we were discussing this with the team at Michael Baker, we discussed the the timing of the project. The E&S permit still needs to get submitted to get finalized. So there were some things in there that we took a look at and realized, you know, by the time this would go out to bid, we'd probably be in the fall timeframe already anyway. So the project timeline is something that would need to be looked at again to see, you know, and with this grant, that could change the project to 2022 if needed. So, you know, we could go either way here with this. You know, if the board tonight, you know, decides not to go after this grant money, it's possible the township could go out to bid this year and get under construction sooner. Personally, I think going out to bid in the winter time, you know, towards the end of the year, beginning of the new year, is actually a better time to go to bid. I do feel that contractors will be lining their work up for the upcoming season. We'd probably get better prices. We may get a better response from those contractors. So, you know, I think it's worth going after, in my opinion. You know, there is money out there that could support the construction of the rehabilitation of Wares Dam, and you know, there's a sizable amount, which would in fact reduce, you know, any monies that the township would need to seek out in other means.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. I'm sorry for asking so many questions. I didn't have any supporting information on this ahead of time. I would have done my research in advance. The grant that's going to be written, will it be specific to only the concrete repair of the actual dam structure?
Yes, the entire rehabilitation would be put into this grant request. So whatever physical work is required as part of the bid package would be supported by this grant. I hope that makes sense.
It does. I guess what I'm trying to understand is, because it's a park rehabilitation and development also, I mean, are we going to include other park projects
no, it's
specific to the dam repair that we
Yep.
are seeking?
Yes, it's specific to Wares Dam. So it's not meant to, you know, go anywhere else in the park. So it is specific to that project.
And this will be a matching grant. Obviously, the township will, is it a 50-50?
It is.
Grant.
Yeah, yep. DCNR operates on a 50-50 match. So seeing that the township does have money set aside and would potentially put more money aside in the 2022 budget, that's how we came up with the $250,000 grant application request.
So I guess my final question would be, you laid out some benefits to waiting till repairing this until next year. If we go forward with this grant and this board decides that we want to start the dam repair work sooner, are our hands tied so that we cannot do the repair sooner outside of this? Are we, I guess I'm asking, if we apply for this grant, is that also this board giving our direction to say we want to potentially put this project off until next year?
So yes, actually that is correct. So DCNR will not award a grant for a project that's currently out to bid. DCNR does require certain language in the bid package, you know, because it is a state funded program at that point if the grant is received. So yes, that's part of the decision here tonight for the board, is to determine if this is something you guys are okay waiting until 2022 and seeking, you know, monies to help support that project cost, or we don't apply for it and we move forward with the timeline.
That's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about that. So can you repeat the deadline again when you've resubmitted?
Yeah, so April 14th. So it is coming quickly. Hopefully, you know, if we get the approval tonight, we've got our work cut out for us. We got to get this done and submitted as soon as possible. But yeah, typically we would be looking to go out to bid then sometime in early 2022, I would say. You know, but this is a project that would make more sense constructing, or I should say repairing, when there's lower water levels. So if you're thinking about the timing of it, you know, in terms of the construction season, you know, a wet, a wet fall or a bad winter, it's going to slow that project down anyway. If this gets awarded sometime in the spring, the contractor gets a notice to proceed sometime, this time next year or May, they can start working on that over the summer when the water levels would be lower.
Correct. I remember that from the presentation. There is a lot to consider here, so I'll yield the floor for other questions at this point.
Is
I
there
have a
any
question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Walk.
That was a very interesting and pretty complicated discussion. A lot of trade-offs. So my question is simply this. Randy, you gave us, sort of like two options and the schedule issues. What's your recommendation?
Personally, I could see the grant going either way. As I mentioned, it is it's a slightly, unusual grant request, I would say, through DCNR. But after a conversation with the regional advisor, and not to put him on the spot, but it is in a park, so it is something that DCNR considers because it is in the park. Again, I do feel pretty strongly. I mean, just seeing other construction projects go out to bid, in the summer versus the fall, there very likely could be a cost difference, with somebody lining up work for the upcoming year, or somebody just throwing a number at the wall because they're busy, and then seeing if the township would take it. So there could be some benefit to the township, financially speaking, by potentially waiting to see if this grant is awarded. Again, you could, the township could receive, a sizable amount of money that could pay for, a third or a quarter of the project. I don't know, and I don't have a crystal ball for me to be able to tell you if the grant's going to be awarded, but I guess my recommendation would be to go after the grant, see what happens, go out to bid during a more appropriate time in the year.
So Randy, the grant is not guaranteed, obviously.
Right.
Okay, and by waiting for it, we have to wait for another year before, roughly a year before we do the repairs. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah. I mean, but that also gives us time to get everything, in line. The E&S permit review could take a few months, so we're already in April. By the time we get our, everything in order, we might be in July already anyway, till we come back to the board, ask for permission to advertise the bid, till we receive the bids, till we, select a contractor, get approval from the board, and then get all their paperwork in order. We could easily be in, late August, early September here anyway, which is, maybe only a few weeks away from hearing about the grant. I've seen them announced in early October. I've seen them announced in December. So it depends on the state's process at that given time and how fast they get through it.
Yeah, so based on your explanation, Randy, it makes sense to go for the grant.
That's entirely the board's decision.
No, I'm just saying it based on your.
I would, if I may, knowing the grant process, only because I've been involved in the grant process with other things, and from the timing standpoint that Randy had mentioned with going out to bid and possibly getting a better price on the work, I think from a timing standpoint, we'd probably end up close to into next year anyways, until we got all the approvals back from DEP and everything in order. It makes perfect sense to take the opportunity, apply for the grant. There's not a lot of grants for this type of work. And if Randy, you found one that potentially could work, I think that's fantastic. We should absolutely go for the grant. We're not talking a huge difference in time frame, and it could be a huge difference in cost, which would make perfect sense. So I would personally lean towards definitely going for the grant. See how that works out. We can't lose. I mean, the only thing that can happen is we don't get it, and I don't think we'll lose that much time if we don't get it. But what could happen is we would get it and we'd save a heck of a lot of money, which would be fantastic.
I just have one other question, Randy. Do you feel that the dam is by any chance hazardous or potentially something could happen to it during this 1 year before the repairs?
I personally, I'm not a structural engineer. I'm not an expert in dam safety, but I think with what Michael Baker has put together and conversations with the engineers, they seem okay moving forward with this process as well. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on that, but I'd hate to say yes or no there, but it's been standing for over 100 years now, so a couple more months we should be fine, and it's we're actively moving forward with the permitting process with the state. The state's well aware of the deficiencies of the dam, so they know we're moving forward in the right direction.
Thank you.
Randy, what is the deadline on the DEP permit? I knew that it was time sensitive.
Would have to punt to Renee on that one if she's here. Renee, can you help me out with that one?
I don't believe Michael Baker, we had looked at that and it did not say that it was time sensitive from a starting perspective. So again, Michael Baker looked at that and felt it was okay to go for this grant.
I vaguely remember that being discussed during our meeting though, and I don't recall. I thought there was a date that the work had to be completed by on the permit.
I don't recall there being a date on that permit. The contingencies were that all the other permits had to be obtained.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Renee, is there any way that you could verify that before we vote? Because I would hate to push this close to the deadline and miss our opportunity to have the permit.
I'm looking right now.
Thank you. I know we waited quite a long time to get it from the DEP, so I don't want to put off this project if it's going to interfere with if there was a deadline, and I just can't recall, so I apologize.
While Renee's looking for that, are there any other questions or comments from the board before I open it up to the public? All right. Tracy, do you have anything in the chat as far as questions on this particular topic?
Nothing in the chat at this moment.
Is there anybody on the line, on the phone, that wants to unmute and has any questions regarding this topic?
Hey, this is Mark Tinsley.
Hey, Mark.
How are you? So my question is, do we look both for grants to fix the dam as well as grants to remove the dam so that we have a total understanding of what the cost would be to fix it versus the cost to remove it?
Well, no, we didn't do that, Mark. We already know what the cost to remove it. We already knew that kind of was the impetus of some of this, where we're at today. The cost to remove it was zero because we had a complete grant to remove it, but the decision was made not to remove it and to rehabilitate it, and that's what the costs are that we're talking about now. If that answers your question. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I guess I'm trying to understand if that grant to remove it is still available, so it'd still be zero, so we can understand because the total cost is expected to be a lot less than what it seems like it's going to end up being to repair it. So I think, as public, we should have a full understanding of the difference in costs.
Well, that I couldn't answer off the top of my head. I don't know. I don't know if that original grant is still available, and that part of the discussion, that's not even on the table at this point. So I'm not really sure how to answer that question.
Well,
I guess I would want to, yeah, go ahead.
So, Mark, I believe there was a vote earlier above the Riz Dam by the commissioners in terms of to repair it. And I believe that that was the vote, it was to repair it rather than to remove it.
But that was, do we have the total costs at this moment so we know what the repair is going to cost?
We haven't, yes, we have an estimated cost on that. And Renee, you have that, don't you?
I believe, Commissioner, just a point of clarification, the project to rehabilitate the dam was actually put to the voters in a referendum, and it was approved by the voters, and that is the impetus behind the repair versus the removal at this point. It was a successful referendum, and it went out to permit. We've been approved by the DEP to have the work done. It is within the scope of the amount that was approved, and that is my understanding of where we are at today.
Well, a certain amount. Actually, that's not correct. The referendum was to borrow a amount. The referendum was not around taking up or fixing the dam. It was around borrowing a specific amount of money. And so I want to understand: are we still within that specific amount of money, or have we gone past that amount of money? In which case, certainly the voters should be informed that it's going to cost X to remove it, or it's going to cost Y to repair it.
Well, all this was covered in our workshop.
So Renee, you had all.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So Renee, you had the total cost. Could I just hear what that was, please?
I don't think we have the total cost. We're looking for bids right now.
There was a.
So we have an estimate though, no?
Yeah.
The engineer's estimate was in the range of 600,000.
Okay. And is that still true? Or that was what we asked for back in 4 years ago or 5 years ago?
They presented that as an engineer's estimate again, because it's a rehab on the dam. They're just fixing the concrete work. Again, that's before any bid goes out. So that's the engineer's estimate at this point.
And I believe the referendum was up to, but not to exceed, was it 600,000, Renee? I think it was, or Joe?
I think it was, I mean, I don't know if it's talking to me as Joe or
the referendum was to incur debt up to $600,000.
That's what I thought.
But I believe also in addition to that, we have money put aside in the amount of probably close to 150,000 for that purpose. In addition to the 600.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, so we should just know it's 0 versus 750,000 or whatever the total is.
But we don't know, Mark. We don't know what the price to repair is yet. We have an engineering, as Renee indicated, we have an engineering estimate of 600, but we don't know what the price is yet. So we do need to get estimates before.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
All right, thanks, Mark. Is there anybody else with any questions or comments? Renee, do you have any luck on the permit to see if there was a due date for repairs? I don't recall there was one either, but I wouldn't know unless I had the permit in front of me.
The stipulations on it are notifying, 5 days in advance of proposed time of commencement of work, notifying LCCD, and then notifications 30 days after the completion of work. I do not see any stipulations with the timing of the work to be done.
Very good. Thank you for checking.
Well, it would be my recommendation, kind of going to, Mark had mentioned about the costs and the concerns and making sure the public knows if we have the opportunity to offset those costs, even potentially, I think we should do everything we can to do that. And, with that, I would make a motion. We move forward to sign and submit the authorization papers for the grant for the dam.
I'll second the motion.
So we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Morgan to move forward with the grant process, and a second from Commissioner Kelly. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
Yes.
Commissioner Seton,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes. All right, motion carries. Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Renee. Thanks for your
You're
questions, Mark. All right. Moving on to our next item under resolutions, we have in front of us this evening a resolution appointing Mark Luth to the South Whitehall Township Planning Commission. I'll report out on this one. We had a variety of interviews. Interviews were held between myself and Commissioner Mobilio at the time. As part of the interview committee, Bill McNair as the chair for the planning board, and also Renee. We interviewed a variety of candidates, two of which had dropped their names from the consideration list. And then we had 3 left that were considering the position. And as a group, we came to the consensus that we felt Mr. Mark Luth would be the perfect fit for the planning board position that is open. He currently serves on the zoning hearing board. He's got a wealth of knowledge on the process and procedure. He is also the president of Lehigh Engineering with a great deal of knowledge on the process and rules and regulations. So with that, I will defer to, I'm not sure if Bill McNair is on the call tonight. I know he was part of the interview process. Bill, are you with us tonight? Bill McNair? He may or may not be.
I don't worry.
Okay, no problem. But that would be the recommendation of the interview committee, is to appoint Mark Luth to the Planning Commission. Are there any questions or comments from the board on this particular appointment? I think Mark Luth might even be with us this evening if there's any particular questions for him.
I am in attendance.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
So
Go ahead, Joe.
I don't have any questions. I do have a comment about Mr. Luth. I have known Mark for quite some time, dealt with him and his company in the engineering process. Incredibly professional and very, very qualified in my view.
Commissioner Walk. Thanks,
Yes.
Joe.
Yeah, thank you. I have some general comments about the process. I actually attended zoning hearing board meetings where Mark Luth has done excellent work. We've never met personally, and in my point coming up, didn't get to see each other or speak to each other in the interview process. So with all respect to Mark, I'd like to make a motion about the interview process. The motion is, as a standard practice, South Whitehall Township will have a fully open interview process for vacant committee positions where the entire BOC will review the applications and select the candidate who will be interviewed. Interview the candidates at a public meeting versus private meeting, and select the successful candidate. This motion would enable the full BOC to give guidance and direction regarding the South Whitehall Township committees. It would provide transparency across the full BOC and with the public by allowing the public to observe the interviews. That's the short version of my motion.
I think we first have a motion on, we have a consideration for an appointment of Mark Luth. Your motion isn't related to this particular appointment, Commissioner Walk, but I think we owe it to the process that currently is in place to at least talk through that before we enact or talk through yours with respect to what's been done to date.
Yeah, so let me give some information about how it would apply to this case. And again, I'm not trying to say here anything about the candidates, but we can use this this current interview process as an example. So one candidate who applied wrote at length about his vision for South Whitehall Township growth and development, including the comp plan, which is currently under revision. He explained the township goals and what he would do to achieve the goals. And include some things like community needs to grow responsibly while maintaining a balance. Also, South Whitehall processes should be followed by developers within the regulations and ordinances. We need to improve notification and communications with the public. Now, this candidate has the same vision and goals as most South Whitehall Township residents. The issue is, under the current process, we and the public don't know anything more about this particular candidate because he wasn't selected, and we didn't see him during the interviews. And in the proposed new open interview process, the entire BOC would get to learn about all the candidates, and the public would get to observe the interviews. And then we would be able to have a thorough discussion as a full board about all the candidates. That's the idea using this particular example.
Well, let me ask you a question.
I appreciate the information that.
And I'm sorry, Diane, 1 second. I don't necessarily disagree with some of your thoughts, but I just want to talk a little bit about historically what's been done with the interview process. And we have a variety of people sitting here tonight that have all gone through this same interview type process, including Commissioner Kelly when she was appointed to the planning board. And it was okay then, but it's not okay now. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I'm not suggesting that maybe we can't enhance the process, but I do not believe that the process that we have in place is not what you used to say transparent. It's very transparent. There's much discussion. We provide all the information. And if it was good enough back then, when other people who are sitting on this call, but not good enough now, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I strongly believe that. Can I finish, please?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I would like to respond to what you said when you're done.
Continue with the process that we have in place, at least for this candidate, because we went through the process as we always have. And if you'd like to discuss that process moving forward, then so be it. I believe we should. But if it was good enough for some of the people that are on this call, I don't understand why all of a sudden it's not good enough now.
Okay, my comment is I'm forward looking and your comment is backward looking. Some of us were elected to enable change that would improve the township as opposed to remain with the status quo and always defend the status quo as good enough. We would like to improve things like these processes for the benefit of the township and the citizens. That's my simple, straightforward answer to what you said.
Sure.
Thank you. If I may comment. First of all, Commissioner Morgan, to your point, yes, I was appointed this way, but I was a citizen. I had no governing power. So the decision and the process of the Board of Commissioners at the time when I was appointed, I didn't have any say in that. So I appreciate that. But secondly, thank you to Commissioner Wilt for raising some interesting points. I think thank you to the interview committee that did include the chair of planning as well as the township manager. There are 4 Board of Commissioners tonight making a decision that only one commissioner has any knowledge or background on. And you know, I've said this every time we've made any appointments, that I have asked to have an open process, that all commissioners would have the opportunity to interview, to ask questions, understand the background, and the level of interest on different people who are applying for boards. And, here we are again. It's unfortunate, Mark Luth, I've seen you on zoning, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. It's been, very, very, very well done from what I've seen as a citizen as well as a commissioner when I attend the meetings. But I have to agree with Commissioner Wilk at this point, given all the discussion we've heard tonight. I will second his motion. I believe that we do need to have a more open process so that the 4 commissioners who have the authority and the responsibility to fill 4-year positions on our boards, I do believe we or should be afforded the opportunity to be part of the process, all of us in open session, to be fully informed of the people that we are appointing to our boards. Again, this does not reflect on Mr. Luth. I have said this for every appointment that we have made since I have been in office 15 months now. So I would second the motion, Commissioner Wilk.
For the record, this isn't, I love how we get on these conversations and, you make it sound like it's the first you've ever heard of all the candidates or anything about them. So, that's definitely not the case. The information on the candidates was provided to you. You have it. You had an opportunity, if you had some questions to ask them, you've chosen not to, and that's your choice. I am not against reviewing the process or possibly even changing it moving forward, but I still stand behind the process that we have in place and what we did to get to this point even this evening. Moving forward, if we want to consider that making modifications to it, I'm not against that, but I do not believe that we need to get into a situation where that's why we have different volunteer committees to help through these processes. If everything we have to do has to go be micromanaged to the nth degree by everybody on this board, I'm not really quite sure how we're going to get anything done. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be sharing information, but there has to be some faith in the information that we're bringing back as a committee. We interviewed all of those people, every single one of them, and everybody got the same level of respect through the entire process. And we took it very seriously. That's why we have so many different people on the interview committee. So, the lack of, of belief in the process, if the 2 of you feels that strongly that you need to change it and micromanage it to death, then I suppose, yeah, we'll talk about it as a group. I agree, but I'll tell you, even after, if I agree to making changes to this particular process, I'm going to make a motion that we appoint Mark Luth to the planning board, because I believe we went through the steps we needed to. I believe he's the most qualified of all the individuals, 2 of which dropped. And I think we need somebody on that board that has a vacant position. And I think he's the most qualified. So I'm going to make a motion for his appointment on that board.
And I'll second the motion of you, Commissioner Morgan. I would make also another comment.
As a point of order, Commissioner Morgan, there is a motion on the floor. I don't believe it's appropriate to have a second motion when there's already been a motion and a second, and now we have a.
All right, roll call vote. Well, let's open it up for comment from the public first before we make a final vote on that. Tracy, do we have anything in chat?
Yes, Jacob Roth would like to speak.
Sure, Jacob.
Hi, yes. I'd like to make a comment about the motion that's currently on the floor. I know that the term micromanaging and having all these interviews conducted in front of the full board in public was brought up. I'll note that Lower Macungie Township, also a first-class township in Lehigh County, does conduct their interviews publicly so that the public can see them and that all commissioners can be involved. So there is precedent for this. And I guess my really question is, what is the problem with being more transparent? Even if the interviews are done with two commissioners, why aren't they done publicly? I guess I'm not understanding why more transparency is a bad thing. And to your point, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioners Kelly and Wolk have made this motion several times and nothing changes. So I'm interested tonight, the fact that you said you look into these changes, I hope you do, and I hope these changes are made, because this has now been said at least half a dozen times in the past 6 or 7 months. And I just wonder when this change is actually, when or if these changes are going to be taken seriously and possibly implemented.
The changes that were presented by Commissioner Walk have a lot of issues, a lot of things that we need to go into detail to find out. There's privacy issue and all kinds of other things that are involved in it. It has to be modified and looked at before we can even think about it.
Yeah, I thank you, Commissioner Sutton. I'll just say that, again, two commissioners have brought this up several times for months now, and nothing has seemed to have happened. So if there needs to be time taken to look into it, I'm just wondering how long it will take. Would it take 8 months? Because that's a rough estimate of how long this has taken so far.
I think Commissioner Morgan stated that she was willing to look at it, and certainly I am, and it is something that we will look into it very shortly.
I just have a quick comment. There's a parallel discussion around posting open positions, which today South Whitehall posts open positions on the website. But there's an example where either Commissioner Kelly or I made a motion repeatedly, and it took several months of rejecting the idea, recommendation, until it finally was implemented for the benefit of the public. So here's another case where, as Mr. Roth said, we've made the recommendation several times, and I guess it just takes making it several times until there becomes a bit of a motivation to make a change.
Commissioner Walk, with all due respect, I never ever put down posting them on the website. So, I mean, you can do your best to try to paint me out as somebody that doesn't want to change, all those different things. That's fine. I'm okay with it. Whatever makes you feel good. But I'll tell you this, I am not adverse to change. I'm not. I'm happy to talk about it. Do I agree with all of the procedures that you mentioned in your motion? Well, no, not necessarily. I think we need to talk about it as a group and decide. And we also have a situation now where we have a person we need to put on the interview committee because Commissioner Mobilio is no longer with us. I would assume either you, Commissioner Walk, or you, Commissioner Kelly, would want to be one of those people. And I would hope you would. So be it. And that, if then you still don't like the process, then let's talk about changing it some more. But let's start with a discussion on how we're going to do it first before we make a motion on it exactly how it's done.
Well, I
I'd
believe
like to
that
make a comment.
I'm sorry.
Mark Ruth, I'll make one comment.
Sure. Go
As
ahead.
one who went through the interview process, I can tell you there was a well-rounded interview board. You had a planning commission member, you had board of supervisors, you had a township employee, and I don't think there was anything unfair about holding it in private. Certainly, when time is of the essence and you're trying to fill space, and township meetings only meeting once a month can actually draw the process out. That being said, I've also been on the zoning hearing board for 8+ years, and whether I agree with the process or don't agree with the process, I've given the vote, whether it be yes or no, to requested variances for a project because that's what I was appointed to do. If I don't agree with it, I don't abstain from voting at all. So I'm not gonna stand behind a a statement that I don't believe in the process and I'm not going to vote on it. That's what I was put there to do. I was put there to vote, whether I agree with it or not. And whether someone agrees with my vote or not, I at least made a vote.
Your comments, state again, this discussion that we're having is not reflective of you, Mr. Luth, or your qualifications. I appreciate your comment on the procedure so far.
So we have a motion on the floor. Are there any other questions or comments? Tracy from the chat?
Yes, there are. Monica Hodges is next.
Monica.
Hi, thank you. 1707 Penn's Crossing. I appreciate everyone's comments. I do agree that there should be a change in the process, so thank you for visiting that at some point. I think there's a big difference between micromanagement and good, open, transparent government. I think these interviews should be public. We should do everything in the light of day. Should do everything in public. That's my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else, Tracy?
Yes, there's several more. David Kennedy is next.
David, of course. Dave Kennedy, 3727 Pheasant Hill Drive. My question is actually directed to Mr. Zader. In the late 90s and early 2000s, there were certain boards that used to do the interviews on vacancy in executive session or private, and that was changed. And specifically, I can speak for school board, where anytime we have a vacancy, it has to be done in a public arena, in the sunshine. So I would like to direct my question to Mr. Zader and say, has he looked into this very specifically with the Commonwealth of PA? Of do the interviews need to be in sunshine or privately? Thank you.
I'll be glad to respond, Mr. Kennedy. It's actually a very good question, because up until 2013, there was a question under the law whether such interviews could or could not occur in an executive session. As most people on the call are no doubt aware, the Sunshine Act prescribes that most activities of an elected board and many appointed boards need to be conducted in a public forum open to the public. But there are exceptions to that rule. And what happened in 2013 is that there was an appellate court case in Pennsylvania that settled the issue. And what it said is that as long as you're not deliberating and making decisions, a board is allowed in executive session to gather information. And in the context of what we're talking about here, I would assume that the interview process is one of gathering information. And if it does happen behind closed doors by a full board in executive session, the board could not deliberate and make any kind of decision. But on top of that, recognize that the Board of Commissioners ordinarily is composed of 5 people, and 2 commissioners do not constitute a quorum. So the 2 commissioners being present would not have a Sunshine Act issue technically. But the discussion this evening, all that I guess is technically irrelevant, because we're talking here about a process that it's up to the board to decide on. Hope that helps.
Well, thank you. Some of it does.
Tracy?
Brad Osborne is next.
Welcome, Brad.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Morgan, and thank you, Tracy. My question is around the, not the candidate at all. I don't question the credentials and integrity of the candidate, but more the process. So my question is, what questions were asked of all the candidates, and what were those questions? And what were the answers of the proposed candidate?
So I can't tell you verbatim what the answer was, but I can tell you what the questions were for all of the candidates were. Why are you interested in this position? what makes you feel you would be, not necessarily qualified, because you don't necessarily have to have specific qualifications, but what kind of background do you have, do you bring to the table? General questions about, community involvement and why you want to be involved, and experience dealing with the public, and different topics that could be, controversial, how you would handle those types of things. So they were general questions, Brad. Quite honestly, you were commissioner when we had this very same process in place. So the different types of questions that were asked of candidates that were interested in boards and commissions. So I know you were involved in it. So it's not much different. We actually had
Just to
more people
follow up,
involved in
what were
interview
the
process.
answers to the questions to the proposed candidate on the questions, Commissioner Morgan, that you mentioned?
Well, I might be able to shed some light on that.
Sure.
I think it has something to do with, look, I've been in this township for 40 out of 50 years. I went to Parkway Manor, Springhouse. My kids go to Parkway Manor, Springhouse, and the high school. I've been a township resident for just about all my life. And I've worked in land development for close to 25 years, which was another one of my answers. I've been on the South Whitehall Township Zoning Board for at least 8, maybe more, not quite sure when. And then I've been in front of multiple Board of Commissioners, Board of Supervisors, Planning Commissions, and Zoning Hearing Boards in and throughout the Lehigh Valley. I know how to read a plan, which is actually important when you're sitting on a planning commission, that when someone spreads a plan sheet out in front of you, you know what you're looking at. I said I do understand the process of planning. I do understand the importance of a comprehensive plan for the township. And I do understand the law when it comes to land development. I'm no lawyer like Mr. Zader. But I think that pretty much sums up a ton of the questions that were asked.
I would have to say, Mr. Lou, thank you for that. Actually, for the public, thank you for that as well, because we were not aware of the questions that were asked. And I think that the answers or information you provided is good for the public to know. I guess my one outstanding question, which is not to you, but to Commissioner Morgan, who is on the interview committee, how did Mr. Lou stand out among the other candidates as far as answering those questions, and why he is the most appropriate selection?
We can't hear you, Commissioner Morgan.
I believe experience. I think he answered it himself.
You're on a very long
Can you hear me
delay.
now? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're on a delay though.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm not sure why I'm on a delay. Can you hear me now?
You're good, Tori.
Okay, great. So I think Mr. Luth answered it. His answers were why he stood out. His experience was top notch. I think that separated him from many of the others, and the others were very had great information as well. But those were some of the things that made Mark stand out. With the work he's done with zoning, with his experience in his own firm, those types of things. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Rob Hodges is next.
Hi, Rob.
Hello, Rob Hodges, 1707 Penn's Crossing. Just speaking as a member of the public, and full disclosure, I was one of the people who dropped out of the interviews. We don't know, perhaps we had the names of the other two from a previous meeting, but we haven't heard their qualifications. Mr. Lou certainly sounds qualified, but we don't know what the others, how they stack up and why he's being chosen over them. And that's why a more transparent process might help the public to be aware of that as to why one is being chosen over the others. Point two, it wouldn't have to take any more time. This wouldn't have to be done at a BOC meeting like this For example, I'm assuming that in this COVID time that your interview with Mr. Luth was done virtually. The public could be provided with the link so they could just watch it. I'm not saying interfere, ask questions, but they could watch the interview as it goes on for all of the candidates. And so it shouldn't take any more time. And point number 3 is just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean it's the best way for it to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no other names in the chat, Tori.
All right. Anybody on the phone that wishes to address this particular topic?
Yeah, this is Mark Pinsley.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, so I guess my first question is, was this resolution on the agenda?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And in the resolution itself, does it, the resolution that Mike, the Commissioner Walk proposed tonight is on the agenda?
No.
No.
Okay, so just to clarify, when he said he wasn't forward thinking enough to get it on the agenda, is that correct? Okay, and within the proposal itself, does it say that board members should not be voting members of any committee?
No.
Okay, and also there seems to be some fallacy being promoted saying that this is non-transparent. However, we, the public, could ask Mark questions now. Is that correct?
Absolutely. He's on the call.
Okay, so in terms of transparency, we could ask this person anything that we wanted for any committee. Is that correct?
He's on the call if he's willing to answer them, yes.
Okay, so it's completely transparent. It's just that the commissioners, the other commissioners, want to micromanage and be a part of all of the selection process. Is that correct?
I don't want to answer for the other commissioners. I'll leave that to them.
My quick answer is yes. You were able to ask Mr. Luth questions tonight as if this were an interview. Just like
that's right. So I could ask him any question I wanted. So it's completely transparent.
Wait a minute. I'm still speaking. Let me answer your question. Please. You could ask him questions and he can answer the questions. And one of my points is that that's how this would occur in a public interview. But the difference is tonight, we only have one candidate in front of us. We do not have the other candidates in front of us. Therefore, you nor anyone else can ask the other candidates questions.
But that's because we trust the board to reduce the quantity of candidates down to the one where we could ask questions. Isn't that correct?
I believe there were 5 candidates originally, 2 dropped out. That leaves 3. It's not a big deal to interview 3 people.
But they were interviewed by commissioners. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we trusted you guys because we voted you into office to make some decisions for us. Because I don't believe that you're going out and looking at every snowblower and all of the different possibilities of snowblowers. We're taking the recommendations of our staff. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's all my questions.
So
I'd just like to make a follow-up comment. This appointment is done by the full elected Board of Commissioners. And to a point that somebody made earlier, this is not about Mr. Luth. We have not been given an opportunity to understand any of the other answers that the other candidates might have had. And again, there's 4 of us voting tonight, only 1 commissioner has any background knowledge. It just, again, to Mike's point, I'm sorry, to have a process where the full board is afforded the opportunity to ask questions and understand the candidates that we are pointing to 4-year terms on our boards, in my opinion, is a wise decision for this board to make, so that we understand and have knowledge of the candidates that we're voting for. That's my comment, so.
Yeah, so this is really a matter of you guys don't trust each other more than anything else. That's really the issue. Because like from my perspective, you know, of course I work at Lehigh County. We have committees all the time that do this. This is not a transparency issue. You're turning it into something that is not true.
Well, I guess we could call up Laura McCungy and ask them why they do them publicly in other townships as well within the within Lehigh County. You know, it's a government decision that the board needs to come together to make a decision. So that's my answer.
Okay, so have you already called those other townships?
I actually did speak with some at Laura McCungy.
Oh, then you should give us the questions that you asked and the answers that they gave.
I asked how they conduct their interviews. And I believe, I know, I've looked on their website, on their agendas, they post all of the letters of interest and resumes for the entire public to see, and they redact out any particular personal information, but it is part of their agenda packet.
Yeah, and there's tons of them that don't do it. So I would just be curious as to all the ones that you talk to that do it this way, and all the ones that you talk to that didn't do it this way, so that you could give us a full reading and with all the questions and answers, so that we, the public, understand why this is a better solution for us.
Well, in my opinion, it's a better solution as a commissioner making a decision to choose who's going to be on our board, to have the knowledge of the questions that are asked and the answers that are given before we vote to appoint someone to a board. Thank you for your question.
Right, I understand that that's your opinion, but you have no facts behind it. So you're not sharing with the public the information from the other counties or the other municipalities.
I shared what I've opened so far, so thank you for your question.
I have a comment, and this is just in response. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a comment.
You have a motion and a second. That's what she said.
Yeah. So this is not just in response to Mr. Pinsley. This is a comment relative to several points that were made. I have a vision for South Whitehall Township where its government will move towards full transparency. I ran on that platform, and everything I've done in the last 15 months as commissioner has been to provide the leadership to move in that direction. I've advocated moving for full transparency on many, many issues, this being just one. And comments that this is about micromanagement or this is about a trust issue among commissioners is a deflection, and it obfuscates the reason why I'm advocating that we move in this direction.
If this was a thoughtful process, you would have put it up on the agenda and it wouldn't have been dropped in someone's lap like this while you have somebody waiting to be appointed. It was unjust, and perhaps you have somebody that you want to put on the board. I have no idea, but it was the way it was done was inappropriate and unprofessional.
Okay, well, so we have a motion on the floor and a second about the process. I will say this before we go to a roll call vote. I would ask that you know, I will tell you I'm not in a position tonight to make a solid decision on the process until we all talk about it, especially because now our interview committee has to shift anyways because Commissioner Mobilio is no longer on it. So if there's anything, I would suggest that we have a group meeting, a team meeting, a workshop meeting to discuss the process moving forward. I'm happy to do that. But I am not in a position to make a final decision on exactly how we're going to do it, at least not until we get some legal input too on how we can do interviews, what information we can share, what that means for our candidates. I would want to do that before I made a motion and an approval on anything. So that's where I stand on your motion, Commissioner Walk. I'm not against discussion and possible change, but I'm not in a position tonight to make a final call on it until we get legal input and put together a solid review process as a team. So we do have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Walk and a second from Commissioner Kelly. I'll need a roll call vote, please, Renee.
Commissioner Walk,
Yes.
Commissioner Patton,
No. And let me just make a comment, if I may. We are here to vote for the appointment of Mr. Luth and not for discussion as to the process of voting. There is many issues that has to be discussed in the process, and this is not for today's vote. So my vote is no.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
I vote no, and I told you why I vote no. It's not because I'm against change in the process. It's because we need to go through that change and make sure that it's acceptable to the entire group, and it's also legal. So I'm happy to meet as a group and discuss it and propose something at a future meeting that makes sense for everybody. Plus, we need to put somebody else on the interview committee. But at this point, I agree we need to have more discussion on it. So that I vote no. So we have a 2-2 vote, so the motion doesn't carry. I will make a motion this evening, though, based on the process we did have in place and the discussion we just had, that we do appoint Mark Luth to the Planning Commission.
I'll second.
I have a roll call vote, please, Renee.
Commissioner Walk,
No.
Commissioner Seton,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Nay.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Luth. Hopefully we can revisit this after further discussion with the board on maybe a modified interview process, and hopefully
Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. I
moving
understand.
forward.
And
All
since we are being recorded, and I know it will be transcribed, and in lieu of it in writing, I will put my letter of interest verbally to Renee tonight, that I would be interested in the vacancy that Matt Mobilio left, because obviously there needs to be another vote on this board. And it sounds like after tonight, you could use it. I will forward that in writing as well, Renee, but I just wanted to put it out here tonight.
Okay, thank
How
you.
convenient.
I don't even know who said that. So thank you.
Could we mute the microphones that aren't?
All right. So I'd be happy, Commissioner Walk and Commissioner Kelly. Let's regroup on a good time to get together and talk about the process. Also talk about the interview committee and somebody filling that. In the meantime, we still have boards and commissions that need people, qualified people. So happy to talk about that. Please just reach out. Let's pick a date that works.
Well, can we go ahead and schedule a workshop for that soon then, so we can get this matter dealt with?
Sure. I'm not sure.
I don't have my calendar in here.
I don't have mine up.
I'm not asking to schedule it now. I'm just asking to do this in a workshop setting where we can have.
Absolutely. That's more than fine. That makes perfect sense. We can do it in a workshop setting for sure.
Thank you very much.
And we can work with Renee on some dates that we have available. All right. Moving on. We have, for consideration and possible action this evening, we have our People's Security Bank and Trust Resolution for Linan. Linan, I will not say your last name right. I'm so sorry. Cocone, Linan Cocone, our tax collector. So Linan, would you like to report out on this evening? Is Linan with us? You might have to unmute yourself. I know Linan was with us when we started.
I don't see her, Tori. She was here.
She could be in on a call.
She
Maybe
could.
the callers.
All right. If Linan is not available, Renee, would you like to report out on this one?
Can you hear me?
Oh, we sure can. Linan, you're back.
For some reason, there was a delay because I hit the microphone and anyway. So I've been saying hello for the last minute.
Welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay, so I've had my tax collector account at BB&T for the last 3 years, and they gave me some short notice on fee changes. And basically going forward, unless the governing entity that I collect for has a holistic relationship with them, they're going to charge 50 cents per check deposited. So basically, we're looking at $5,000 to $10,000 a year in bank fees to deposit checks. So I met with Carmen at People's First Security, and they have they offer bank accounts that are collateralized according to Act 72, and Parkland School District has already approved them to go forward with my tax collection account, but I need to get approval from South Whitehall Township to move my account there for that as well.
Thanks, Lynanne. Is this this is time sensitive? Sounds to me like.
It is, because, you know, the April 1st bill came out, and I'm posting all of the collections that I've received so far, but I have yet to deposit the checks because I don't want to incur that fee with BB&T.
Gotcha. All right. Are there questions, or Renee, did you have anything to add to this? Lynanne gave a good report out. Before we go to the board with any questions or comments?
No, I mean, Lynanne explained it. This is not an account that the township accesses. So again, Lynanne's the only one with the access to this account.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments to Lynanne from the board on her request?
I just have one question. So obviously this is time sensitive. How long do you anticipate it will take to get this account set up if it's approved this evening?
Well, probably by the end of this week, because once they start either this week or very early next week, it would be open. Unlike Wells Fargo, which could take 3 to 4
Then she was just gone. Look,
We need to mute some mics.
I know she's dead.
There we go. Thank you. Sorry, Lynanne.
That's okay.
Thank you for your answer.
Any other questions from the board? All right. Tracy, do we have any questions from the public?
Let's see here. Kevin has a question. The question is, if appropriate, his question is, let me see, was any reason given why the fees at BB&T were so very high?
Whose question is this, Trace?
Kevin.
We just need to get Kevin's address then too.
Hi, Kevin Merler, 1628 Barkwood Drive.
Sure. Lynanne, did you catch that question?
I did. Over the last month, they've given us a new account manager, and apparently Truist Bank, who now owns BB&T, has been discussing this for a while, and we were just given short notice at the end of March about this. And it's not just my account, but it's all tax collectors within Pennsylvania. Basically, Truist Bank made a decision that unless the governing entity that we collect for has a holistic relationship with them, they're going to charge these exorbitant fees. And I understand that, because believe me, I mean, I'm depositing a lot of checks. The tellers have to read every check. So basically they're saying, why should we work for free? And since South Whitehall doesn't have a holistic relationship, and neither does Parkland School District with BB&T, they're just basically throwing this at us.
So basically they just don't want the business.
Well, I mean, they don't technically, if you think about it, because we really have no savings accounts with them or loans with them. Basically, it's a checking account that I deposit money into. Their tellers have to work to record the deposit, they're not making money off our money because it's in and it's out within a month.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Lynanne on this topic?
There is one more from Cindy Smith. Can you digitally cash a check?
Not at this point, no.
Any other questions? All right, I'll open it up for a minute here or so to anybody who might be on the phone who might have a question. They can unmute. All right. No other questions? Do I hear a motion this evening to move forward to open the account at the People's Security Bank and Trust for Lynanne as our South Whitehall Township tax collector?
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a second on the from Commissioner Seton. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
Yes.
Commissioner Seton,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes, motion carries. Thanks, Lynanne, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
You are so welcome.
Have a good rest of the night.
You too. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, moving right along. So we have something exciting. This is good news. So good positive stuff next. So next for consideration and possible action, we have a motion to proceed with the approval of our South Whitehall Township COVID-19 Relief Small Business Grant Program. We have our possible recipient list that the COVID grant team worked very, very hard on processing. That was made up of Jess O'Donnell and Ashley Laura from the Chamber of Commerce. We had engaged with them to handle this particular project in cooperation with our township staff, which included Scott and Renee, and also we had some input from legal just to make sure that we had everything covered. So a lot of hard work going through all of the necessary documents that were all part of the resolution and followed that process and came up with 8 very deserving businesses for this COVID grant. And I'm going to hand things off to Jess and Ashley to present on this particular topic tonight. So this is exciting. Jess, Ashley?
Thanks, Tori. I will kick things off. I'm Ashley, Vice President with Affiliated Chambers. And I'm just going to explain a little bit of the process that we went through just to make everything clear. So we took the ordinance, put it on our website, and had fillable forms so people could submit their information. Upon submission, they were then directed to email me their W-9 and 2019-2020 tax forms. And with that information, I worked with Director of Finance Scott and also with the Business Privilege Administrator Cheryl to verify all that information was correct. And then we went through and compared applicants, all their information to the ordinance and the disqualifiers, if you will. So we had 39 total applicants, but some of those didn't qualify. As Tori said, there are 8 people up for potential approval. So some of actually there were 4 reasons why people were disqualified, if you will, or are not up for approval. 4 of those applicants were not actually businesses in South Whitehall Township. 4 businesses did not complete their application, so they submitted their form through our portal online on the website, but they did not submit any documentation. And we made sure to reach out to them at least 3 times over their 2 different methods of communication to make sure that we kind of covered all our bases and it wasn't just one form of communication. 13 businesses were Lehigh County grant recipients, and based on the ordinance, that disqualifies them from receiving this grant as well. because the group really wanted to target those businesses that were specifically struggling and underserved. And then finally, there were 10 businesses that did not lose more than 20% in gross receipts between 2019 and 2020. So that narrows it down to the list of 8 businesses who are eligible based on all of those things and all of the other pieces of information that the board approved through the ordinance. So these are 8 businesses that are in the township, sent all their information, did not receive a Lehigh County grant, and they have unfortunately lost significantly more than 20% of gross receipts between 2019 and 2020 as a result of the pandemic. I'm going to turn it over to Jess to talk a little bit more about the process and kind of our outreach efforts, but I wanted to give you the details, the facts.
Thank you, Ashley, and good evening, commissioners. It's very exciting to be here and presenting to you 8 qualified businesses through your grant program. Wanted to talk a little bit of how we communicated with our businesses to provide them this opportunity to apply for this grant through South Whitehall Township. First and foremost, we want to thank all of you for getting the word out there. It is a true team effort of getting that message out there, and it's something you should truly be proud of, that you are giving this opportunity to businesses that are definitely struggling, and the future is unknown for some of these businesses. So thank you for getting the word out there. We did host it also on the South Whitehall Township website. So again, maybe some people didn't know about going to the Greater Chambers page. South Whitehall was promoting it for us too as well, so thank you. We sent out multiple press release. Morning Call WFMZ picked up this grant opportunity program for businesses, which would explain why some businesses not in the township applied for it. They're probably thinking, hey, it's a grant opportunity, let me apply for it. Again, listed on the Chamber's website, social media posts. I could say from the Greater Chambers social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, our Facebook page, and also Western Lehigh, we were posting it all the time. We were posting it in community pages such as South Whitehall Township Gossip. We wanted to hit as many audiences as possible. We made phone calls, thanks to Renee and the team over there. You all provided us with a business list. We had to do cold calls. So we divided and conquered among 6 of us. We made those calls. We had to Google some of these numbers and talk to them, walk them through this process. Because again, we realized not everybody is on social media and not everyone is picking up the paper. They're busy running businesses. So we did do those cold calls. We left messages, talked to people at all hours of the day, evenings, and weekends. Emails, we had a form submission again on the website, and we were really Facebook messaging. We were kind of like stalking people on Facebook, like, hey, this is a great opportunity. Here's the link. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. LinkedIn, Instagram, emails. Western Lehigh and the Greater Chamber does a weekly email. It's our like what's happening. We targeted specific businesses, so we pulled out the ones in South Whitehall Township and constantly emailed them the ones that we have access to from our database, saying this is a good opportunity to apply for if you have questions. We did feet on the street. Again, there were 6 of us that worked on this program to get it out there. A lot of the people that we did talk to, again, received Lehigh County grant dollars, so that disqualified them. We shared it with our board members in Western Lehigh, specifically some of our bankers that have relationships with small businesses in South Whitehall Township. They were promoting it and pushing it out there for this great opportunity too. It's the power of partnerships and the relationships that we all have that got it out there. So just wanted to let you know the process, the hours, the work to get into these 8 qualified businesses that are eligible for this grant program. I do know that we have a few business owners on with us this evening because your support is truly going to support these businesses. So we're excited to present you with this list, and was really excited to work with South Whitehall Township on this program. It truly shows that you do support the business community, especially during these times. But happy to answer any questions.
I have to say, we certainly couldn't have done this without the chamber's support on all of this. You guys were absolutely phenomenal, and you knew how to do it because you had done it with the county, which was huge. So you knew all the steps to take, and we really do appreciate your help through the whole process. And it is exciting tonight to be able to present eight qualified businesses that are truly in need in South Whitehall that we can benefit this evening. So with that, I will open it up to the board with any questions or comments, and then to the public. So any questions or comments to the board?
I just want to thank Jesse and Ashley and the Chamber of Commerce for being so diligent in finding those people and putting all the time and efforts. It's truly a great thing for us to do. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Joe. Any other questions or comments from the board? Or we open it up to the public?
I would just like to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I just wanted to thank the Chamber for their help and assistance with this program, and thank you for reaching out to the businesses so diligently.
Thank you.
Commissioner Walk?
I'm okay. No questions. Thank you.
All right. Any questions from the public?
Robert Hodges.
Mr. Hodges?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
I saw something that I thought was crazy on the internet. Obviously, it is the internet. That's what you could expect. But I just wanted to bring it up here to confirm that it's not true. Somebody wrote something to the effect of the only people making money off of this are the Chamber of Commerce. So my question is any money going to anybody except these businesses? Is anybody getting paid, fees to manage this, or is the money just going to the businesses like it should?
If I remember correctly, there's a 5% that goes to the chamber for their efforts. If I remember it correctly, correct me if I'm wrong.
Is that the percentage? Jessica? Yep.
Yeah, that's the same administration fee, if you will, that both counties have used, and it's usually at the state level as well.
And I'll say it took a lot of time. Like Jess said, morning, night, evenings, weekends. It's not part of our normal job functions. It's something we're doing above and beyond to support our local businesses as partners in the community. We're surely not swimming in any dough. I have picked up additional contracts with the Workforce Board because of the financial struggle that we, like so many of these businesses, are in.
And I will say too, as well, the chamber, the money goes back into our main streets. We have a foundation that supports our downtowns and main street initiatives. I will say early on in the pandemic, and even we actually did 2 grant programs. Our own dollars went out to small businesses, which I remember our very first meeting with the commissioners. We spoke about our grant programs that we did. The first one was early March that we put out. I think it was 300,000, and then we did another 250,000. I can't remember the exact facts because we've worked on many grant programs, but the money goes back into our downtowns and our businesses.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think my computer blanked out when you started answering. Is there was it a percentage or a certain dollar amount? So how much is the
yeah, let me add in here. Hi, Mr. Hodges. My name is Scott Barrett. I'm the Director of Finance. The fee is 5% of the amount that we're going to be awarding. So that'll be about $1,400. And I'll be the first to say that $1,400 is way, way less than the worth that Ashley and Jess have provided to our township. So, that's the fee. And that's what was agreed to by the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, I guess I just have to follow up with the question then. Is this all approved by the state or the county as an appropriate way of spending COVID money to be giving fees to the Chamber of Commerce? Has that been okayed?
So the board voted, I believe, to not use COVID money, but the board voted to use fiscal stability funding. And if you add up the math here for the numbers, the board did approve up to $115,000 I believe it was the amount, and this amount for the small business grants will be $28,000 for small businesses. So no, it was not COVID money, so there are no restrictions on usage.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for answering my question.
For sure, thanks.
All right. Any other questions from the public, Tracy?
There's a question here from Cindy Smith, and the question was who is speaking, and I think she was referring to Ashley and Jessica.
Yes, Jessica and I are full-time chamber staff members. Our duty is to support local businesses. We're a membership-based organization. Jessica is Executive Vice President of Affiliated Chambers, and I work for her.
All right. Any other questions, Trace?
No other questions.
All right. I'll leave it open for just a minute here for anybody who might be on the phone with any questions. You can unmute yourself. All right. Hearing none, I will proudly make a motion to proceed with the approval of the COVID-19 grant, small business grant program to our 8 businesses that qualified, and I hope it helps them and helps South Whitehall's local economy, and we're thrilled to be able to do this. So motion by Commissioner Morgan.
I'll second the motion, and again, I'll thank Jess, Ashley, Chamber of Commerce for their participation with it.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Morgan, a second by Commissioner Seton. We need a roll call vote, please, Renee.
Commissioner Walk,
Yes.
Commissioner Seton,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly.
I need to abstain because I do have business with a couple of the businesses listed on there, and I don't believe it would be appropriate for me, although I do 100% believe in and am thrilled with this. I don't believe it's appropriate for me to approve grant money for businesses that I have relationships with.
Okay. Commissioner Morgan.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, guys. Go ahead,
Say one thing. I'm sorry. I just want to thank all the commissioners and South Whitehall Township. This is a lifeline for these businesses. So I know a few of them are on the call with us this evening. Thank you for supporting our businesses during these times, and thank you for being leaders. This makes me smile. I can actually have tears of joy knowing, because these businesses truly need it. And I encourage everybody to continue to support local. They need us more than ever. So again, thank you to all the commissioners, and everybody was great working with all of you, and we want to continue the partnership with South Whitehall Township.
Thanks everybody. You guys did an amazing job. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, wonderful. So next this evening, under correspondence and information items, we have nothing because we do have a report out on our Green Advisory Council. So we'll push down to direction and discussion items for that one. If you remember, at our last meeting, there were some questions on some of the work being done by the Green Advisory Council, the GAC, as they're so called. They're doing some amazing things and have some amazing concepts and ideas. In the think tank, Frank Petrocelli, who is chair of our GAC, is with us this evening. Frank, welcome. And he has kindly agreed to give a very short kind of presentation on where GAC is today, what the future focus is, answer any questions on some topics. And without further ado, Frank, I will hand it over to you. I know you have a short PowerPoint. Does Mike or Randy have that they can bring up on the screen? There we go.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Tori, and thank you to the commissioners for giving me the opportunity to talk with you tonight about the Green Advisory Council. We've been part of the governance structure of South Whitehall Township for about 18 months now, so I think it's a good opportunity to get in front of the board and give you an update on what we've been doing. So if we could go to the second slide. This mission statement should be one that the commissioners are familiar with, as you had to approve it. I've underlined the word advise because we are, as the name indicates, an advisory group. So we really look to make recommendations to the board, but then look for guidance from the board before taking any substantial action. And obviously, you know, our focus is engaging and educating residents and businesses on economic and societal benefits of environmentally responsible choices. And as I said, the group has been in existence since October of 2019. But we had a chance to meet in person for a few months before, like many similar organizations, we were forced to go to virtual meetings starting last spring. So we go to the next slide. So this is a list of our members. As Tori said, I'm the chair. Judy Cooper is our vice chair, and you can see the other members listed here. We have strong representation from staff as well. Randy, Mike Elias, and Mike Cookitz are all regular members of our team. Just to kind of give you a sense of, you know, it's a very impressive team, if I do say so. I did some counting up. We have 3 members who have PhDs. We have 2 members who are practicing engineers. We have a professor from Lehigh University. We have 3 professionals who are involved in one way or another with environmental compliance. We have someone who's a certified sustainable building advisor. So, you know, a lot of varied backgrounds, but a lot of relevant backgrounds for the mission of this group. At the bottom of this slide, I've listed member responsibilities as I see them. The first one is to educate ourselves. I mean, we all bring certain expertise to this council, but you know, I think it's incumbent upon us to be a learning group, and so that means that each of us has to take the responsibility to get informed on issues where we may not have much background and be able to discuss them knowledgeably. Obviously, I think our main focus as a group is to educate the community as we you know, identify what we think are good practices from an environmental sustainability standpoint. And then obviously, you know, as we develop initiatives and get board approval to enact those initiatives, we work with staff then to do just that. So next slide. The way we've structured the GAC, as opposed to just having a single body, is I thought it was important to subdivide the group into committees so that we could have, you know, a smaller group focused on specific activities or initiatives. So each member it's incumbent upon them to be participating actively on at least one committee. Most of us are on several. We match the committees to our current initiatives so that committee structure is fluid and will change as the initiatives we work on change. And the current committees we have are focused on recycling, stormwater best practices, single-use plastics, and then an overarching committee working on communications across those first 3 initiatives, as well as other activities we may be engaging in. So then the last slide, just to talk about some of the things we've worked on so far, things that are sort of in the books already. We have an electronics recycling event that we scheduled at Parkland High School. It's going to occur on May 22nd. We're really excited about that since it's been quite a while since the township has had such an event. We're partnering with North Whitehall Township for that event, so it'll be residents from both townships who are eligible to participate. We recently updated the resident guide for trash, recycling, and yard waste. That was an activity of the recycling committee, and that's a mailing that will be going out with the trash bills in the coming months. The Stormwater Committee is working on a supplement for the upcoming South Whitehall Township newsletter in the fall, where we're going to highlight some specific actions that residents can take to be responsible about stormwater management on their properties. We've decided to developed what we call GAC facts. So these are just short statements about sustainable practices that we can use, in a number of ways. We can put them in the newsletter. We have a web page that's part of the new South Whitehall Township website, so we're posting GAC facts there. A couple of the GAC facts went into the resident guide that I just described. So, we're going to continue to generate these because we think they're good prompts to just get people thinking about environmental sustainable practices, in short, kind of soundbite way. We have reached out to Parkland High School and their conservation club. We'd like to have a couple student members on our council at some point. We haven't made a lot of headway on that because the conservation club itself has not been meeting because of the COVID restrictions at the school. So we've made the initial contact, but we're probably going to table that and try to restart that in the fall. As far as future activities, I know one that's generated a lot of interest from the board is this business survey. So we had a lot of discussion about single-use plastics and reviewed some ordinances, some ordinance language around potential bans of single-use plastics that some other local municipalities have either enacted or have proposed. I think most of you are aware there's currently a ban statewide in enacting such ordinances, so we're unable to do anything like that at the current time. But we want to be continuing to gather information on that. So we thought, before going any further on that, that it would be a good idea to roll out a short survey to local businesses who use single-use plastics, particularly single-use plastic bags, to just get some sense of, how receptive they would be to a measure that would ban the use of these single-use plastic bags, whether there would be any difficulties created with the ban, talk about, what would be appropriate timing to implement a ban, how long of a transition period would be required. So our hope would be that, with the board's approval, to send that survey out in the near future, and then take those survey results, and then within our council, then try to determine a course of action that we would come back to the board and recommend. But we feel like, this survey is an important input into our work process, to help us come up with, what we feel would be a reasonable and an achievable recommendation back to the board. Then the last one there is really just a concept that we've begun to pursue in conjunction with the West Downtown Rotary Club. There's some interest in locating a community garden somewhere in the township. So we've started to look at some locations. The staff members on the council have recommended one location in particular that they think might be suitable. We're doing our homework to look at budgets and, what kind of both a capital budget and an operating budget. We would hope that we could staff this almost exclusively with volunteer labor, but, we want to try to develop some kind of a plan as to how much labor would be required and whether an all volunteer labor effort is feasible or not, and then just try to gather some more information so we can come back and discuss this with the board sometime, hopefully late spring, early summer, and have something more tangible and more substantive to talk about beyond just a sort of a basic concept. So kind of have put some meat on the bones so that we have something that's actionable, if you will, and something that we can make a decision on. So that's the slides I have, and at this point, again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about what the Green Advisory Council's been doing. It's been a fun group to be part of. The members are very engaged and very passionate about these subjects. So we're looking forward to continuing to do some things to the benefit of all the residents of South Whitehall Township. And happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great job, Frank. Excellent. Any questions or comments from the board?
Go ahead.
That's okay, go ahead.
So Frank, I'm not sure your status. I was going to say as 2 Air Products alumni.
Yeah, I'm retired from Air Products for 3 years now.
Right. Congratulations then. So I had a hand in requesting the GAC to come and make this presentation. So I thank you very much for doing so. I think you packaged it well. You right-sized it for what I think we need to do, need to know at the board level. I just have one general question. You already mentioned it. There's the state moratorium on the single-use plastics. But do you have any other comments about how the interface between any federal, state, and township legislation, how that impacts anything the township may choose to do? And I'm not just talking about single-use plastics. I'm talking about anything that comes to mind.
I'm sorry, Mike, I'm not sure I understand the question fully, but clearly, I mean, state law would take precedence over anything we could do at the township level, I would believe. So I don't think we can implement anything that would be contradictory to state law, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that's sort of the gist of what I was asking. To what extent can a township, create an ordinance? Is there always going to have to be an interface with state law to ensure that a township ordinance either complies with a state ordinance or isn't counter to a state ordinance? I mean, a state law. I apologize. It's a very general question. I suppose it's very hypothetical. If there isn't a solid, case or answer, that's okay.
I mean, in the case of the single-use plastic bags, there have been municipalities within Pennsylvania who've already enacted these ordinances. So from that standpoint, I don't believe it contradicts state law except for the moratorium that's currently in place and is set to expire, I think, this fall, before the end of the year. And actually that moratorium is currently being legally challenged in the state as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Walk, Mike, perhaps I could shed some light on the question you've asked. And my answer does not pertain to the realm of the GAC specifically. It's really broader than that. There are really 3 principles that come to mind. One, a municipality like South Whitehall and any other municipality is only allowed to enact legislation, meaning ordinances, that are enabled to be enacted pursuant to state law. Unlike the state and the federal government, we are not a plenary governmental agency that can do anything we want as long as it's not unconstitutional. So it's got to be authorized, number 1. And number 2, it can't be contrary to state law or the Constitution. And then finally, there may not be a specific prohibition, but there are certain areas that the state government will choose to preempt the operation of statutory at the ordinance level, statutory type of authorized legislation at the township level, which is an ordinance, and where the state has decided it wants to preempt activity by a municipality, they will make that clear ordinarily in the legislation, though sometimes it's determined judicially.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I should have let the lawyer answer. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome. Thank you, Frank.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you for the work that you're doing on your committee. I was the one that brought this up at the last meeting, and it did not speak necessarily to that I didn't agree with your work. It was more about a process question, since the board is the one that that sets direction. I appreciate that you've given us a presentation. I have attended the GAC meetings since since your inception as well. And I know that our Planning Commission, our Civil Service, also does yearly reports to the board, and I would encourage you to consider doing this yearly so that we're aware of certainly what you've done in the past year. Also, maybe what's on your horizon in the future. I think that would be helpful to have some communication between this advisory board and our board. I have had the benefit of attending the meetings and watching what you do and listening, but the rest of the board has not. So I encourage you to maybe make that an annual event. But I guess the overarching question on the one initiative that seems like it's ready to be sent out to the community is, we as a board haven't discussed the appropriateness of a single-use ban for bags in the township with business owners and its potential effect on businesses, that sort of thing. I personally, just to provide my input, would love to see us create incentives for businesses to reduce plastics. Certainly opportunities to provide more locations around the township to recycle plastic bags. And again, any type of incentives that we can do as well as educating the public to reuse them if they're not choosing to recycle them. So just my thoughts, but thank you for bringing this information to the board.
Yeah, a couple comments, if I may. One is that I'd be happy to, update the board on an annual basis. My hope would be, since we're going to need board approval for, moving forward on initiatives, that I would be communicating with the board much more frequently than once a year. So, I look forward to the opportunity to speak with this board on a regular basis. Specific to single-use plastic bags, one of the things we've been trying to do is educate ourselves on recycling practices. And, one of the really disheartening things we've been learning is the really low percentage of recyclable material that's actually recycled now. Because it's there's been some changes in outlets for recyclable material. There were some decisions made by China that eliminated an outlet for all but the most pristine plastics to be sent there. So, in discussions with Advanced Disposal, now part of Waste Management, our trash hauler, they said in the last few years they've gone from being paid for recyclables to paying for recyclables. So, it's become, as opposed to a revenue stream, it's become a cost stream for them. So, that's reflective, I think, just of recyclable industry in general. There are some opportunities to recycle single-use plastic bags, but our understanding is that a lot of those recycling collection points, those bags don't necessarily end up being recycled. So, that's something we'd have to look into a bit more if we were to, promote that as a practice. So, again, the survey is really meant just to gauge attitudes. We're not, we're trying to be careful in the survey language that we're not saying we're going to do this. We obviously haven't gotten the board approval to do anything. So, we're not in a position to indicate that any action will be taken, but we're just trying to get a sense of, if we were to move forward with this, what would be the pros and cons of doing it from the standpoint of the people who, the business owners who would be directly impacted.
I guess just a follow-up question, just because it could be a monetary issue for the residents. If a business needs to, for example, spend more for a different type of bag, it could be passed on to the consumer. And is that going to be included in your survey, or will we approach the community at that point?
That's one of the questions, right? I mean, because in other ordinances we've seen, there's a ban on single-use plastic bags. If you choose a paper bag as an alternative, you have to pay a small fee. It might be a nickel, it might be, I think, 15 cents. We saw in one ordinance. And then, you know, the obvious encouragement is to bring your own bags that are reusable. So, you know, so we do have a question in the survey about that. Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board for Frank? Any questions from the public? Tracy?
No comments in the chat.
All right. So that being, and I'll open it up just for a minute or two here from anybody on the phone who might like to comment on this subject. You want to unmute yourself? All right. So that being said, thank you, Frank. That was a fantastic presentation. So that being said, I know that the GAC group has supplied, I had supplied it, I think twice, a copy of the survey. I know you're anxious to move forward with that. So if there's not any specific questions from the board, I think the GAC is going to move forward with their survey process just to gather some more information and feedback to the board at a later date on any recommendations from that information.
I don't have the survey in front of me. I don't want to take up much more of your time, Frank, but is there a question on there as far as the economic impact to the business themselves?
Yes, yeah, we are asking if there would be, you know, an impact that the business would incur. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks, Frank.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation, and I look forward to speaking with you again frequently in the future. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you.
We do.
Morgan,
yeah.
Before we proceed, I believe we skipped. We
Yep.
had on resolutions we were going to discuss as a board the process to.
Yeah, we do. Yes, that's coming. Right, that's coming after GAC. But I do need to, under correspondence under correspondence under boards and commissions, I failed to mention some upcoming meeting dates. We have Monday, April 12th, our Park and Rec board meeting at 7 p.m. We have Tuesday, April 14th, the Civil Service Commission meeting at 1 p.m. We have Thursday, April 15th, the Planning Commission meeting at 7:30 p.m. Monday, April 19th, the Green Advisory Council meeting at 6 p.m. I also wanted to mention, again, we have our Civil Service Commission still has 2 vacancies for alternate positions. Our Landscape Shade Tree Commission has 2 vacancies. Our Park and Rec has 2 vacancies, and since our recommendation tonight did not go through, we still have 1 vacancy on planning. If anybody out there is interested, as we've always said, please submit your information. You can go online to get the application to fill out. If you have any questions finding the application, just give Tracy a call and she can help you through the process. So,
Commissioner Morgan, just a question on the vacancies on the Park and Rec. I believe those were the Parkland School District representatives. Is that accurate, or are they other open seats?
That's correct.
Correct.
But those representatives have to be South Whitehall residents.
Correct. And then just one more question. I also saw on the website that the Environmental Advisory Council has 3 vacancies as well.
We are, that was one of the discussions that we had, and Joe, I know Joe and the team and staff were looking at that. The Environmental Advisory Council and the GAC primarily have the same roles, so we're determining whether or not it makes sense to combine those 2 committees or not. So we haven't moved forward with filling that because the EAC hasn't met in years.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Can I also just make a correction? I believe the civil service meeting is Wednesday, the 14th, not Tuesday. The date's correct. The day of the week is incorrect.
All right, thanks. All right, so Wednesday, April 14th, Wednesday, not Tuesday, Civil Service Commission meeting, 1 p.m. Commissioner Walk.
Yes, hi. So could, regarding that environmental committee review, who is looking at it?
If you remember at a past meeting, I know we had passed it off to staff and legal to look at boards and commissions, which ones were we had the ability to combine. That would be the Environmental Advisory Committee or Council and GAC, and the best way to handle those types of things. So they're working on reviewing that information. But the Environmental Advisory Council hasn't met in years. GAC basically serves the same purpose, so actually a little bit more. So we were looking into what makes the most sense.
Okay, good. And I have one more meeting announcement. We've agreed the Finance Committee will meet next week, Thursday, April 15th.
That's a committee meeting. That's not a public meeting.
That's not a public meeting though. But yes, very good. Thank you. All right. So to the point we talked about earlier, we do need to talk as a team on the process for appointment. So what I thought would be good first is Attorney Zader, would you mind just kind of outlining for the board and also everybody on the call just the basic steps for appointment? Now, understanding with the timing that Commissioner Mobilio resigned, this appointment position would only be effective till, I believe, January 2nd or the end of the year. That's the first meeting in January. But I'll let you touch on all those points, and then we can go into, as a team, talk about the process for appointment moving forward.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Obviously, the first step in the process was the submission by Mr. Mobilio of his resignation that has now been received by the board, and the action taken by the board earlier this evening to accept that resignation officially starts the time clock under the First Class Township Code. And the vacancy is effectively declared by law once that acceptance of the resignation occurs. So the position of commissioner to fill Mr. Mobilio's seat is now officially vacant under the law. And the process that's provided for under the First Class Township Code is that there is a 30-day period in which the Board of Commissioners, as it's presently constituted with 4 members, would have 30 days in which to appoint a replacement for that slot. The requirements that someone must have in order to qualify for that slot are that the person must have been a township resident for a minimum of the past 1 year, and the person must be a registered elector, essentially someone who is registered to vote in the elections in the township. If the board is unable, for whatever reason, to come to a consensus and make an appointment during that 30-day period, then there is an additional 15-day period that follows in which the Township Vacancy Board would have an opportunity to make that appointment. And the Vacancy Board consists of the 4 remaining commissioners and the appointee of the Board of Commissioners to the Vacancy Board. That appointment occurred this past January. If during that 15-day period, the Vacancy Board is unable, for whatever reason, to appoint someone to that role, then the chair of the Vacancy Board would be directed by law to file a petition to the Court of Common Pleas for the court to then affirm a person for that role. That's it, essentially, in the process. It's pretty straightforward. Does anyone have any questions about that summary?
So Joe, the position, the appointed position to fill Commissioner Mobilio's seat is only effective until the end of December, and then it would.
Just about. The way the first class reads is this appointed position would be filled by that person as a commissioner taking Mr. Mobilio's place, not for the entire duration of the remaining term of Mr. Mobilio, but rather it would be through the first Monday of January, which I believe is the 3rd of January. And of course, the person who would serve in January following that is a person who would be elected in the upcoming election in November.
So, Mr. Zader, if I understand properly, what you're saying is that comes there are actually going to be 3 positions available.
That's what it would seem to me.
The coming campaign, and how will you distinguish? Yes. How would the campaign distinguish between 2 years and 4 years, or are they all going to be 4-year positions?
It's a very good, very appropriate question, and as of this point in time, I'm not sure the answer to that. I would think that the township will need to consult certainly with the county, because elections are really handled at the county level.
I think Joe Sutton and Joe Zader, we're going to have to reach out to Tim Benyo at the county voting office and find out the steps that would follow after the appointed position becomes done. Does that, I'm not sure what that means to people. If I don't know if it means there's an opportunity for people to petition again to get on the ballot for the general election. I don't know any of those answers, and only the county would be able to advise us on that. So we'll have to, Joe, if you didn't mind, kind of consulting with them and finding out from a legal standpoint what we need to do as a township, that would be fantastic. Because I think there's more questions right there than answers. I think we do know what's in front of us in the next 45 days. But then, after the end of the year, I'm a little uncertain myself, because this one's a little bit different than in the past because of the timing. So, team, I think, 30 days goes by in the blink of an eye. I think we all know that, gosh, you wake up in the morning and then all of a sudden it's a nighttime. So, I think what we need to do is figure out a time frame. I've already heard from a few different people that have had some interest in the position. What I've told anybody who said something to me is put a letter of interest together and any supporting documentation and get it to Renee or Tracy, and they can compile everything. It's the same thing I told all of you via email, but we need to figure out a more formal process to letting the general public know that. I think we need to pick a date that would be a cutoff for accepting letters of interest and supporting documentation, and then also pick a date for interviews with a plan for a recommendation for appointment. I'll just throw this out there just for discussion. Certainly we can play with it.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt. You're going into the process, and I just have a couple general comments I'd like to make before we go into the process. This will be very short. We, the board, the remaining 4 commissioners, have acknowledged this, and I think it's important for everyone to understand this. Our solicitor, our staff, and the public, and the applicants. The full board has equal authority and accountability for the vacancy process. So we are working together as a 4-person team in order to define the process and then to execute the process. And I have one other general comment. I think we need to document the process. Whatever we come up with tonight, will be the first revision, hopefully the only revision. But I think it needs to be documented very well and issued to the Board of Commissioners, the solicitor, the township manager, and I also think it should be published to the public on the South Whitehall Township website. That way, we have an official process that we all agreed, and conversely to that, we should not have a process that's being communicated word of mouth, you know, depending on who you happen to talk to. All right. So that's I kind of separated things into categories of things we need to understand versus the process. And those were the first two that I had. Does everybody agree that we should have a documented vacancy process? Tori and Diane and Joe, do you agree that we should document our process?
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So take it away.
So, you know, in looking at, and this is just looking at timing, I'm not talking about I wasn't really actually going into the process, but I appreciate all that. Mike, I'm just looking at timing. If we consider April 21st, which is that is the second Wednesday, that's actually would be our next meeting date, to be the cutoff for people to submit letters of interest and any supporting documentation to whoever we designate, whether it be Renee and Tracy or a combination, whatever it is, and then possibly look at the week of 26th through the 30th. I'm just throwing out dates because I'm just trying to break it up into time frames for interviews. And then we would be, if we could get that all done, we may be able to be in a position to make a recommendation for our May 5th meeting, which would put us within that 30-day time frame.
Commissioner Morgan, would you like to know something amazing?
You had the same dates.
Exact same 3 dates.
See?
Now,
there you go.
So let's make sure everybody else concurs. I have some comments about what we do in between those dates, but well, maybe I should just say it. So I think April 21st, that gives enough time for people to submit their applications. I also think we need to advertise. Joe Zader can explain that, but I think it should be advertised on the website and probably go out to newspaper advertisements. And then we would have done a thorough job communicating it, but still have the ability to get applications back by April 21st.
I think it's a good timeline to start with. I was actually going to make that same comment that as far as advertising on our website, certainly, but if there's a way to get it in both of our newspapers, the Morning Call and the Parkland Press, not everybody's on social media or uses the web, just to make sure that we cover as much of a swath to the community as we can for people that may be interested in this. I don't know, to ask Mr. Zader for timing, if there's anything that we need to follow.
The website and social media timing would be within the control of staff. Same with the website. As far as newspaper advertising, certainly the Morning Call would not be an issue. There's a bit more of a lag time to get in the Parkland Press simply because it's a weekly publication, and so we need to act quickly on the Parkland Press to get something in the weekly newspaper in the week prior to the cutoff.
Thank you.
I'm not opposed to advertising, but I think it's pretty much out there. I can't imagine that anybody that's interested does not know that the vacancy is there. So the media Morning Call, I'm not sure it's even necessary.
Well, I would agree that the people are aware of the vacancy. They may not be aware of the steps and the timing of the process to apply. But I think that would be what I would suggest to potentially explain the process in the media, print media.
Yeah, that
The
comes back to the first point I made. So,
I think the
yeah,
township website is probably sufficient in my view, but that's,
I disagree, simply because people don't, not all people know about the township website. And even if you know about the township website, you may not go there. This to me is a pretty significant appointment. It's not much different than other, significant zoning, planning commission or board of commissioner meetings on land development, conditional use. I mean, this is pretty significant.
like I said, I'm not opposed it, but I'm just, I feel it's almost irrelevant, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm good with it too, but I will say this, I would hope to God that if somebody has an interest in being being a commissioner or on this board, they would have gone to our website. So that I don't know how else they would find out about, different things about the township without, at least hitting the website once. But I agree. I'm fine with advertising it, getting it in the morning call, Parkland Press, that makes sense. So whatever we would need to do to, get it in as quick as possible to make sure people knew that April 21st was the application or letter of interest cutoff. So, I think what we need to talk about is,
Commissioner Morgan?
we don't necessarily have an application.
Oh,
Right, so we're going to do, I would say, a letter of interest as well as a resume is what we should be asking for.
Yeah, just a letter of interest and any, I refer to it as like supporting documentation. Most people use a resume. I mean, that would make sense, but something like that for sure. But we don't have a formal application process for this.
right. So back to we'll define the process. I mean, it could be as simple, the process says applicants must submit a letter of interest and a resume. Do we think we need to put any more words around it?
No. And I think you need to we need to tell people what you need to be qualified. I think that, like Joe had mentioned, qualified applicants must be a registered voter and live in the township for 1 solid year. I think it's important to put that in there because so people know.
It might also be a good idea to form like maybe 3 or 4 questions to ask the applicant. Like, why do you want to become one? Certain questions that might reveal more information about the reason for the applicant to get in.
That's not a bad idea. Maybe like it would almost be similar to like what the League of Women Voters does. They ask one question. I mean, I think maybe 3 or 4 might be too many, but if we could agree on one question that maybe we'd like them to answer in their letter of interest, that might be a good way to compare apples to apples, how responses to a particular question. That's not a bad idea.
Thank you.
I like that.
Well,
That sounds like a good idea.
On the other hand, the interview is really going to be the most important, where we can have feedback and questions, and certainly would, however we're going to structure that last week of interviews, that they would be open to the public. We'd have to advertise that, I assume, with Mr. Zader's advice. Certainly not a bad idea to have a question just to get a conversation started for each candidate, but our personal questions to each person, I think, is where the information will come for all of us to hear.
I really do like the idea of at least having one pertinent question that comes in. It will help kind of lay the groundwork for the interviews once they get started. We would just have to come up with a common question that we all agree upon.
Isn't that the intent of asking for a letter of interest? Wouldn't that also spell out someone's going to give us their reason why they think they're...
Well, if that's the question, I mean, we may want to make it a different question. We may want to say, what do you believe is the biggest challenge in South Whitehall Township today? Or what do you believe, and what would you do to remedy that? You know, it may be something like that. You know, I think it might be interesting to get that type of information, and it's gonna, you know, it's gonna give people a chance to really think about, you know, some of those important subject matters. I like the thought of providing a letter of interest, your resume, and within your letter of interest, answer one simple question, and we could decide what that question is.
I'll just throw this out as a potential question. Here's my thinking. Commissioners perform a function, and commissioners have the authority and the accountability to perform these functions or duties. I continually go back to the South Whitehall Township webpage, click on Board of Commissioners, and go down to the paragraph that says commissioners have this accountability. I'll just throw it out as a potential question, is to say, commissioners have these accountabilities. Tell us your qualifications to fulfill these accountabilities. Just an idea.
I think, me personally, I like the question of, you know, because I'd like to hear what people's perspectives are, different potential commissioners. I like the simple question of what do you believe the biggest challenge in the township is today, and what be your thoughts on helping to mitigate or work through that challenge in the future? I would keep it much more broad, very broad.
If the majority of this board is leaning toward a question, I would suggest then that we could each write a question, and then for our particular, have them answer that, and we could go from there in the interviews. We at least would all have a representative question.
But that doesn't include the question, that them providing it in their letter of interest. But I'm fine either way. I don't necessarily want to spend 3 hours talking about, should we ask the question now or should we ask it later? I kind of thought it was a nice concept to gather some thought on the insight to that particular, whoever it is who's applying. But I'm fine with saving the questions to the interview too. But I think we need to be uniform in those questions for every single person we're interviewing. We can't, it's got to be fair and across the board.
Something, if you don't mind my mentioning to the board and to the public for that matter, it's certainly up to you four commissioners whether you do or don't ask a question in the advertisement that goes out as to what you're expecting in the application package. But one advantage to including one or more questions in that package is that if you were to receive 75 applications, 75 resumes, in the 5-day period that's been allotted, you're not going to get through 75 interviews. And the questions that are answered could be a means of knocking it down to a reasonable number for the actual interviews.
Agreed. That's a really good point.
So I did want to bring up, following on from Solicitor Zader, the next thing in the timeline, if applications are due April 21st, and we're going to have interviews during the week of April 26th to 30th, then the Board of Commissioners have to screen applications. And I don't think that would be a public exercise, but rather something that we accomplish on our own. I mean, somehow we have to get from the total number of applications down to the number of people we would like to interview. I don't have a whole lot of thoughts around that other than we need to do it effectively.
I think that's going to be, Mike, to be honest with you, I think, you know, that's kind of fluid because, you know, like Joe said, we don't know. We could get 75, we could get 175, I don't know, or we could get 7. Who knows? But I think first having one question in there that's broad and kind of paints it, that might help us kind of work through those applications. At least it gives us a little more insight into the person other than a resume. So that would be the reason for having the one question up front. And then depending on if you had, so say we have 75, we would have to, like, say all of us would say to each other, okay, Diane, you pick your top 10. Mike, you pick your top 10. Joe, you pick your top 10. I'll pick my top 10. And then we would all come back to the table and say, well, here's my top 10. Here's my top 10. Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if at least 5 of your top 10, all of us agreed upon? And then we could have those 5 be part of that, like, last part of the interview process. That would be a way to kind of break it down a bit. So that would be if you get a really huge group of people. But if we only end up getting, I don't know, 10 resumes or 10 applications or letters of interest, then, 10 people's are not hard to interview. But if it's 70, we may find ourselves in a position where we have to say, okay, you pick 10, you pick 10, you pick 10. We come to the table. Hopefully there's overlap amongst all of us. That would be so wonderful. And then there we could kind of break it down a little bit further. But we would have to play that out because we don't know how many are going to come in.
Well, again, I'm going to reiterate, to keep this process simple, a letter of interest and a resume so that it's an open invite to the community to apply. And I know this could make for some lengthy interview sessions for us as a board, but that's our responsibility at this point. My concern with writing, anybody can write a good answer to a question. They could get outside help. The interview, when you speak one-on-one with someone, is really where you have the opportunity to ask follow-up and have a good sense of where they're coming from. And so if we as a board take that opportunity to interview, I think that's where our strength will lie, but that's my opinion.
Well, and I respect that, Diane, but I do think if we do end up getting, 50 to 100 resumes, we have to have a way to kind of weed through those a little bit. I really like the idea of a question to start, to just one question to kind of kick things off. I think I'm not going to say it's going to make or break anybody, but I think it really gives some good insight. And keep it a general question. What's the harm in it? There's no harm in it. Just gather some information on their insight on how they work.
So Commissioner Morgan, just to clarify, I think you're saying put that question in the LOI or in the advertisement.
Yes.
The advertisement would say, please, in your submittal, please answer this question.
Yep. Please provide a letter of interest and your resume, and within that, please answer the following question. Yep.
Okay. I think that's reasonable.
Yep, I like that. I think that's a nice idea.
Does
Joe,
everybody concur? It's pretty basic.
Yep. Joe, you mentioned it, so I assume you like it. You're on mute.
No, I'm not. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with it 100%. I think it's it will give us some kind of a guidance, and like you said, weed out some of the ones that may not be qualified. So
well, I would have a differing opinion on that, weeding out. I think everybody's entitled to an opportunity to interview with us. And if we're doing that in advance, that way, honestly, everybody knows what a letter of intent is, or interest and resume. And the 4 of us, I think, can go through that and give each an opportunity to come before us and answer our questions. So it's fine if the 3 of you disagree. I just wanted to give my thoughts.
Okay. I mean,
all right.
I mean, one thought I have on the front end, the advertisement part. some people will submit stuff and not wait for the advertisement. You know, others who learn through the advertisement will come a little later. I mean, here we are, Wednesday the 7th. 2 Wednesdays from now is the deadline. So like, why don't we just check in as a team, check in a week from now on the 14th and see how many submittals do we already have. We'll know if it's closer to 5 to 10 so far, or whether it's out at 75.
Oh, yeah, but we can't do that, Mike, because if we're gonna suggest that they need to include a question, I don't see the harm in including the question. It's just general information. It's what the League of Women Voters does. I think it's a great way. I'm not saying it's going to weed people out, Diane. I'm just saying it's a great way to kind of gather some info up front, other than just a resume on somebody's thoughts. It's not going to take away from the process of interviews.
Yeah. Were you talking to Commissioner Kelly or me? Because I've already agreed on the one
No, I was
question.
talking to Commissioner Kelly.
Great.
Okay.
There are 3 of you that are in favor, so we can move on.
Okay, great. All right, so we have to decide on that question, because that'll have to be part of the advertisement and part on the website. And I would imagine we'd have to decide on that question relatively soon. Like I said, I personally would keep it something very general. And we could probably go back and forth, maybe as a team, we could kind of, email back and forth what we think that question should be, kind of get to a conclusion in the next day or so, because they're going to have to advertise this. Do you think we can do that? We don't have to make it up tonight, but I think over the next day, we're
I
going
think
to have to agree on a question.
Maybe by Monday, would that be late?
At the very latest. Does that still give us enough time,
No.
Joe, for advertisement? No?
No, with the morning call, yes. With Parkland Press, no.
When will we need it for the Parkland Press, Renee?
I believe tomorrow. Tracy, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but because they only publish on Wednesdays, I believe tomorrow is the deadline for next Wednesday. Then I think the following week brings it out on the 21st.
Yes, we would have to get it in tomorrow.
Okay.
The morning call is fine. It would be the Parkland Press. And I mean, and if you choose not to do the Parkland Press, that's fine. But we would need that by tomorrow.
Well, I think just to be in line with the Sunshine Act, just so there's no questions, let's just make a decision on the question tonight. I know it's painful to have to drag this out, but my suggestion is a simple question. What do you believe is the biggest challenge in South Whitehall today? And what would you do to mitigate that problem? That would be my question. If anybody thinks of something better, add to it, nothing, whatever, that would be what I would suggest. It's very broad, could really touch on anything.
Excuse me, Tori and Renee, I think Friday, as long as we get it in on Friday, we would be good.
Okay.
Okay.
But I still think we should talk about it tonight and be done with it so that we're clear, so nobody.
So I want to keep it simple. So on one hand, I like the question. It would be fine. My only thought is maybe instead of what do you think the greatest challenge is, maybe it would be what do you think the greatest improvement need is.
Okay.
They're very close.
Sure, I'm fine with that, Mike. What do you believe? What do you believe would be the biggest improvement you could? Something, I don't know how to say that. What do you believe?
Well, I think take your sentence and just instead of saying challenge, say improvement need. What do you think the greatest improvement need is in South Whitehall Township, and what would you do to make that improvement?
So how can you or how you can contribute to it? Yeah, I like that. That's a nice.
Sure. Yeah. I'm fine with that.
Alex, get out of the camera now. Get out of the camera now.
Alex.
Okay. All right, so maybe that we'll fine tune that question. That'll be the question. Sound good? Everybody good with that?
I'm
Can you
good.
just say it one more time for me? I'm doing it as we speak.
Aren't we still going to work on it tomorrow? This is a framework, or we?
No, I think we need to make the decision tonight, Diane, so that it's all clear and we've talked about it in public session.
So I got, what do you think the greatest improvement needed in South Whitehall Township is today? And how would you contribute to,
Said improvement.
okay.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So we have the cutoff for April 21st.
I'm just, sorry, we're gonna do 4 PM on the 21st. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep, that's end of business day. That's good.
And are you all right with saying that they must be available to interview in person the week of the 26th?
26th through the 30th would be Monday through Friday, the last week in April.
Okay.
And we'd also have to say that they have to be a resident for a year and registered to vote.
And we'll be setting up meetings for the week of the 26th through 30th to hold the public interviews.
Are we doing the interviews publicly, or are we doing the interviews not publicly? Are we going to do them all publicly?
I believe they should be public.
Yeah, I recommend they be public for a variety of reasons.
Which are
So
what are the reasonings, Commissioner Wong?
The commissioner position is a public position, and the citizens deserve the right to be present to observe the interviews. Is my first reason.
Observing is one thing. Participating is different. I don't believe that scrutinizing an applicant by 30 or 40 attendants with different questions is, and some of them will be very personal. I don't believe that that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, major clarification. Thank you for saying that. We kind of touched on this before, right? I'm advocating that the interviews be public. The interviewers are only the 4 commissioners. The public would not ask questions, but the interview would be open, so the public would hear the BOC's questions and the applicant's answers. And a little bit earlier, we said we would come up with like maybe 4 standard questions, so it's all fair, and we would ask all the applicants the questions.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Yeah.
I hope that clarification helps. Only the commissioners ask the questions, but the public can observe.
Sounds good.
And so this is not like so Joe Zader, my question to you is, so for the interview process, I mean, the whole, we wouldn't have the chat function open where people are, all those different things. It would be just the 4 commissioners conducting the interviews with the applicant, and then the public would have the ability to listen in on those interviews only. That's feasible? We can do that?
Were we holding these in person?
I was just going to suggest that I would prefer that we do these in person. If we're allowed to use the meeting room, if it's ready to go. I think it would be best to do it that way and have our interviewees, excuse me, come in one at a time so others can't hear the questions or, answers, that sort of thing. So there's some privacy for each particular person from the other ones who are waiting to interview. So I certainly would see us do this in person.
Good idea.
Yes, we have the public meeting room will be available. I guess we could, we could, I don't want to promise this, but I was going to say we could potentially I mean, stream it if that, and if not, I think if we position one computer with the go-to meeting onto the area, then that's a potential as well. But
One way or another, you could do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we can figure it out.
Okay.
But the meeting room, we can do that appropriately, social distancing and that kind of stuff at that point.
Very good.
So Joe, Attorney Zader, were we good with that process from a legal standpoint?
The answer is yes, you will be able to pursue the process. The question I cannot answer right now is, under the Sunshine Act, how we're going to categorize it, whether it's going to be a public meeting or an executive session open for listening by the public but not participating. There are limitations in doing it both ways. And so the best I can tell you, given this hybrid that you've suggested, is that I will look at it tomorrow and be in contact with the township manager as to whether we take one approach or the other.
Okay. It'll either be, okay, yep, I get it. Okay. So those 5 interview questions, I think we would have the ability to come up with, we don't have to provide those up front, Joe, do we, Attorney Zader? We can work on those separately and have them ready for at the time. We don't have to display them out to the public now, do we?
No.
Okay.
Certainly, the question that you've decided on for the advertisement, that's going to be known to the public, but the other questions that the board chooses to ask, they do not need to be portrayed in advance.
Okay. And that's probably good, because then that'll keep it, fair across the board. So we'll work on those together as a team, if we, however we need to do that to get those 4 or 5 questions, Diane, like you had mentioned, together prior to that week of interviews. So, wow. And then from there, we would, from the interviews, we would then have to convene and decide on a recommendation to come back with and go from there.
I just have a few points. They're not the process per se, but like pieces of the process. This won't take long. So one thing that's good with this timeline, with us announcing, successful process, we announced on Wednesday, May the 5th, the results. That happens to be the 28th day in the 30-day time period. So if we're able to do this, we'll get it done successfully within that 30-day time period, which is something we should all aim to do. My other points are sort of like details. So I wrote down all applications and resumes will be sent to the full BOC. It's almost like a statement of the obvious, but
well, in one, I think, yeah, but I think they should all come in together, not sent piecemeal to the BOC, but in one package. So on the 21st, the last day, then Tracy or Renee or whoever would create a package and then get it to us.
who will they come into?
Either Tracy or Renee, I would think. And they will be the handler of the information, and then they'll put it all together. And then after 4 o'clock on the 21st, a package can be created and sent to each one of us. We'll all be getting the information at the same exact time.
I actually put that they will go to Tracy's email address.
Okay.
Okay. Does it make sense to get a halfway package like applications received by the 14th?
I don't believe so. I think everybody's package should be received at the exact same time on the last day that they're due, to be fair across the board.
Okay. All right. My next item, again, this is sort of like common sense. All communications will be in writing and shared with the full board. So to state it the other way around, we're not going to have, as we do this, we're not going to have, I send an email to Tori, Tori writes back to me, like we're all going to be copied on everything.
We already are.
On,
Yep. Yep, for sure.
Run any communication. And, well, this is premature. If we get to the point where there's a vacancy board, the same thing would apply between us and the designated citizen. Let's hope that it doesn't happen. Okay.
Great. Wow. That's impressive. I think we actually came up with the process in maybe a half an hour, so that's fantastic. So it sounds like we have a plan to make this happen. Hopefully we can roll it all out, make it happen, and we'll go from there. Attorney Zader, can you think of anything we're missing as far as this piece of it? I think we got it covered in order to get the advertisement out there.
From my vantage point, the board has done very well with this tonight.
Awesome. I think so too. Great job.
I'm sorry, a point of clarification, Mr. Zader, I guess. Will this be advertised as a legal notice then?
There is no requirement that it be officially listed as a legal notice. I'll defer to township staff as to pricing and where it appears in the newspaper and how all that works. But some things need to be a quote legal notice. This is an optional procedure selected by the board tonight. It is not required by law. It's something to involve the public beyond what you're required to do. So how you characterize it is really up to the board.
Personally, I don't think it should be a legal advertisement. It isn't.
What, can somebody explain the significance?
I'd be glad to, Mike. There are certain actions that a board is either taking or proposing to take that by law are required to be a quote legal notice. And when you do that, because it's required by law, candidly, newspapers charge a higher rate for it because you have no choice but to do it. And then legal notices are set aside in a particular location in most newspapers, different from, say, classified ads or whatever. And in addition, depending upon the action being taken, there may be multiple locations where the legal notice must appear, perhaps in addition to a newspaper of general circulation in the community. It may need to be in a law journal, and there are other examples of where it might have to be. None of those requirements apply with what you're doing here. What the board is doing is exercising its discretion in being transparent above and beyond what is required by the law. So it's your call as to how you want to place this out there.
Thank you. Can I request, I'm assuming it's the township manager, Renee, that will be sending this in. Could you send that to all commissioners for our review before that goes in, just so that we can all be on the same page?
Yep. Yep. You'll probably have it later tonight.
Thank you.
I wasn't listening carefully enough. Commissioner Kelly, you just asked for.
Asked Renee to please email the actual ad to all of us so that we're all aware and on the same page.
Okay.
Be in the loop.
Okay. All right. Sounds like we got a plan. Great job, everybody. All right. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Joe. And Joe, keep us posted on the next steps after appointment's been made, and after you talk to the county, what the status is, what we need to do.
Absolutely.
We'll figure that out. Thank you. All right. If we're done with that, I think we've got a plan in place. Great job. I did have one other item under direction and discussion that I wanted to bring up. It's extremely exciting. I'm not sure if anybody has caught the press release yet, but South Whitehall was recognized for 2021 for the Governor's Award for Local Government Excellence. And I'm honored to be a part of that as well with the work that's been done on the Jordan Creek Greenway. This is amazing recognition for South Whitehall and for the amazing work that's been done on our parks and the connection that we have with other communities. So I'm really excited for the township on this one, and great job by the entire staff and all the partnerships we have with other municipalities in the city and stakeholders in the school district and landowners. This is great news, and a great honor to be recognized by the governor for this particular initiative. So good job, South Whitehall. I just want to throw that out there.
And good job, Tori Morgan.
No,
You were mentioned in there, and you deserve a lot of.
Well, I appreciate that, Joe, very much. But honestly, this is the township. They've done some amazing work over the past years. I've just been lucky enough to be a part of it. And this is something that's not just going to happen today, but for many, many years to come. It's connecting many different communities. It's connecting people. And it really makes South Whitehall the hub of something very, very wonderful. So thank you.
Absolutely, but you should not exclude yourself from it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. But great job by everybody. So if you get a chance to read it, there's some great stuff. Upper Macungie also was awarded, and so was the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. So lots of recognition by the governor for the Lehigh Valley. So kudos to the Lehigh Valley. I just wanted to mention it. That's good stuff. I have nothing else under direction and discussion unless anybody on the board or did.
Sure, I have just a quick question. I had a resident reach out to me regarding some signs that were installed over by the Greenway that say, please use parking across the bridge, South Whitehall signs. And this resident had some concern with needing to walk across the bridge because there's not a designated path across the bridge, first of all. Secondly, they mentioned the wood planks on the bridge can be a little bit challenging. So I guess I remember when the initial discussions were had about the Greenway that there was some talk about putting almost a pedestrian bridge across the creek. I recall, and I don't know whatever happened to that plan, but I wanted to share that concern with the board and maybe ask, I'm assuming maybe Randy might know the answer to this question. I know that it says please not to park there, but how is it that those signs got put up, I guess, in the last week or so? And it is a public street, so I'm not sure. I went over and looked at it myself. I didn't understand what was going on there.
Yeah, so part of the design of the trail going through Covered Bridge Park, the section we're currently working on right now, is actually going to include a expanded parking area to help relieve some of the stress from the existing section. We were getting complaints from other neighbors blocking mailboxes. It was a very popular trail. It still is, obviously. So the issue we were running into over there was cars just kept lining up further and further back, blocking mailboxes, getting into a driveway entrance almost. So, we obviously people can still park, on the road. We're just trying to encourage folks to utilize nearby parking lots as opposed to, taking up the entire frontage and blocking somebody's mailbox.
So I too saw the sign, and the first question that popped into my mind was the safety of the individuals that are parking over at the parking lot and wanting to cross the bridge. And I was wondering if there is maybe a way, Randy, to, and I don't know if we can do it because I think that the bridge is a Lehigh County bridge, but if there is a way that we could maybe designate like part of the bridge, it's a one car only at the same time, so maybe we could designate like 2 or 3 planks and paint them white and make them some kind of a crossing area?
I mean, it's something we could reach out to the county about, Joe. It's not a bad idea. We could reach out to see if they would entertain that. Again, it is kind of a temporary solution. As I mentioned, we're trying to create additional parking with the new design of the greenway actually going through the entire length of Covered Bridge Park here as part of this next phase. So hopefully that will relieve some of the stress and provide a new parking area for everybody. But this was, kind of looked at as a temporary solution just to appease the neighbors and, continue to get usage out of the trail.
No, but and I agree, but even before those signs were up, I always used to park over on the other side of the bridge.
Right. Yep.
And cross the bridge, and of course you had to wait, worry about cars coming and not seeing you.
And that's you're absolutely right. That's been happening well before the greenway was built. Pedestrians have frequently used that as kind of a crossing from one end of the park to the other. A lot of neighbors actually just walk River Road, Ware Mill Road, Iron Bridge Road. They make their own loop almost, through the park there. So it's an issue that's been going on for quite some time, and something we're trying to resolve with the design of the new section coming through the park here.
Wonderful, thank you.
Randy, I'm sorry. Can you just to follow back to? Am I remembering correctly that there was going to be some sort of a pedestrian bridge across the creek?
Yeah. In fact, that was the original plan. And what ended up happening there was it came in extremely way over budget than the amount of money that was obtained through grants. So what we ended up doing then was working with a nearby neighbor for a very small land swap, which gave us access to connect both parcels that the township owns. And that's how we have the trail now on the north side of the creek. So actually going through that process probably saved about $400,000 if I'm not mistaken. We had a bad calculation from the original cost proposal, and then when those bids came back, there was a significant portion of the bridge itself missed, and we were kind of forced to come up with Plan B, and that's how we ended up getting the boardwalks and the trail staying on the north side of the creek, which actually ends up being a better route in my opinion. It prevents us from having to install other bridges down the road. Not to say we're not going to have a bridge somewhere to cross the creek, but keeping it on the north side is actually beneficial long term for the duration of the trail.
And you said there was a land swap when that was done?
Yeah. In fact, it was with the adjoining neighbor right there, the Turners. So they were very helpful through the process, and we worked with them on some strategic plantings to help provide a buffer and some security there. But what ended up happening back in, oh my gosh, I'm probably going back to 2016 or 2017 at this point. There was approximately a quarter acre swapped between the township and the Turners.
Oh, very good. And just back to the please no parking. Is there any or has there been any consideration given to adding parking stripes along there to have designated spaces so that people aren't creating? I know there isn't any striping on the roads right now, but if we were to put parking spots so that the driveways and mailboxes wouldn't be blocked for the residents that live in the surrounding area.
It's certainly something we could explore. Yeah, we have our property line there doesn't go as far as, I would say if we just did it on our property line, we'd probably be talking maybe 3 or 4 cars. It is a public street, so you're correct. And then we would just have to keep it far enough away from the neighbors' mailboxes to provide, easy access for the mailman, during delivery. And obviously, so it doesn't back up into, their driveway. So we could look at something like that.
Sure. And last question, I promise. I noticed there's some barricades there as well. That or whatever brick or concrete wall there seems to have trouble going on. What has happened to the bridge there?
So it's unfortunately a little out of our control there. It is a county-owned bridge, like Commissioner Seton mentioned. I believe, actually, Chief Dorney might be able to jump in on this one. I believe there was a police report filed. I think somebody backed in to that bridge, that wing wall right there, and did some damage. But I do believe that the county came out, assessed the situation, and deemed it still safe for vehicular traffic. So it doesn't sound like it impeded any issues with the bridge itself, other than, it's obviously going to need some repairs.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, Diane, I can put more. That was hit. It was a hit and run. There was a police report made. It did happen night shift storm. And I did talk to the county. The reason they are not repairing it right away is because they're going to have to close it to repair to the wall. While the Lap Road Bridge is out of service right now, they don't want to take both of them, so they're going to fix Lap Road first and then fix that one.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. We will move into any old business. Renee, I'll defer to you and maybe Scott or Dave on Where's Dam and credit cards.
Sorry about that. Where's Dam? We talked about earlier. We're in the process of the application for the E&S permit. Hoping to have that wrapped up I would say by early to late, well, I would say in the month of May, hoping that it would be out in June. And that was a 3-month renewal for that again anyway. That would stay on the same time frame even if we would go out to bid in the winter this year. So that is being currently worked on by Michael Baker and the technical side of that application for E&S controls. And then credit cards, our final piece that we're waiting for, Linan kind of, referred to this a little earlier. Our bank account is with Wells Fargo right now, and we have been waiting for a few weeks for the account status. We have opened a new bank account for these credit cards for credit card processing. So we are just waiting for our online access to that account, and it has been taking them 5 to 6 weeks to get those accounts so that we can actually view them. So as soon as that is done, I have seen the PDF form. Brian Stenson had done a very nice job of putting together a PDF form of the instructions. Scott as well on the instructions for credit card processing that we had walked through in the prior meeting. So as soon as we get that bank account live, we will be able to process the cards.
Thanks, Renee. Any questions for Renee?
I just had one question. Thank you for the update on both of those items. I know we had the campus reno under old business, and I know we're not quite done with the reno yet. So, I mean, I know there's some odds and ends. Is there any update there for us as a board?
No, actually, that was always supposed to be on the second meeting of the month under old business, where we give a more detailed
okay.
on that. So it will be, we're still, again, I can't answer. We're about 99% done. We're in our punch list items. We have obviously moved back to the building, but we're in our punch list items, and our site work is still and is going to be the final thing that is continuing to be worked on. So
thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Renee on old business? Tracy, do we have anything in the chat?
Actually, we do, Tori, but I think some of them are with regard to the vacancy regarding Matt Mobilio's position.
Oh, we forgot to go to public comment.
We can open that up at well, we're on courtesy of the floor, so if you want to we can bring that up now if you have some comments or questions on those, Trace.
Okay. The first one is Jacob Roth.
Well, thanks, Tracy. Most of my concerns and questions were actually answered throughout the course of the deliberation. I am just wondering, Attorney Zader, how long do you think it's going to take you to determine, I guess, the election process for that open seat? So I don't know if there's a time that you would recommend the public reaching out to you. I'm just interested to know about how that process would work once you find out from the county.
My goal would be to reach out to the county promptly, and assuming we start the dialogue and the county's responsive, which I certainly have every reason to expect they will be, I would most likely report to the commissioners and township manager about it upon receipt of information. And then I think that the goal would be to make sure that it's a public meeting, that information could be relayed to the public.
All right, thank you very much. That's all I have.
You're welcome.
The next person is Cindy Smith.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi. I was just curious, and I worked in HR for a long time. As far as residency, is that going to be a requirement or not?
Oh, yes, you have to be a resident of South Whitehall Township.
I think you said for a year, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry to bother you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Never a bother. Trace?
Thanks.
Jeff Ward, his question was, can you confirm there will be 3 spots to fill now in the fall election?
I think that there's 3 spots, but we have to find out the process for that third position, which would be the appointed position, which ends at the end of the year. So more detail to follow, like Attorney Zader had mentioned on that one. Sorry, Jeff, we don't have more information on that. Hopefully we'll have it here in the next day or 2.
And then the next one is Joe, and it was about asking one written question. I didn't know if he wanted to add more to that, Joe. And I don't know, there isn't a last name here.
And an address. Joe, do we have your name and address? Joe, are you with us?
Joe, me?
No, I think it's Joe, somebody from the public.
So many Joes around.
I know. All right, I'm not sure Joe is still with us. So Joe, are you still with us? We're not sure which Joe. We just need your full name and your address, if we could, with your question. All right, we'll give Joe a second here. Trace, you want to shoot to the next one?
And I just wanted to make sure, I know Cindy Smith had a couple different entries here. I didn't know if she wanted to ask any other questions. I thought I'd mention that.
Cindy, did you have anything
I'm
else?
here. I worked in HR for a long time, and like the first thing that came to my mind is there going to be background checks, or is that something you require? I came from education. It was a requirement. Does the township require that or not?
Attorney Zader, I'll defer to you. I don't believe it's required, but.
No, there's no requirement. And keep in mind that while commissioners receive a stipend, they're not employees of the township in the true sense. So the ordinary protocol that even South Whitehall would go through in hiring someone on its staff is different than the process that would be followed in what amounts to being an elected official, even though the current appointment is not going to be an election until next year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Cindy.
David Kennedy is next.
David. David Kennedy, floor is yours.
I have no comment.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have Rob Hodges.
Rob Hodges, floor is yours.
Hello, thank you. Is this courtesy of the floor, or is this just about the open position?
We're actually, we're a courtesy of the floor at this point.
Okay, well, one quick comment about the open position, just for the good of the township, for the smooth working of the board, for the harmony of everybody involved, with all the qualified applicants I'm sure we're going to get, I really hope the board can find a candidate that they can agree on with a 4-0 vote. To have a split vote that has to go to the vacancy board, that just seems like a travesty. I'm sure you guys can all work together to get a 4-0 candidate.
That would be our goal, Rob.
Okay. Completely different topic. I did a right to know request for how the COVID grant money was spent last year, and I have some questions about it. The total received was about $325,000, but the figures given to me showed that about $400,000 was spent. So question one is, where did that extra money come from? If I can just throw out all the questions and maybe people can take them as they choose. Question two is, who was it who decided how the money was spent? Because I don't believe it ever came before the board. I don't remember any board meeting where it was discussed. And $30,000 was spent on laptop computers for remote working. And that just seems like a heck of a lot of computers, a heck of a lot of money you spent on computers. A good laptop, easily suitable to do remote work, could be bought for $500. So that sounds like 60 computers. Is that really how many employees we had that needed remote working? So those are my questions, and I look forward to the answers.
Mr. Hodges, yeah, so we submitted to the county, they asked us to submit anything that will qualify in their 4 categories of COVID grant money at the time the CARES Act came out. Again, those were payroll expenses for the township. They were PPE for COVID. They were rent and utilities allowed in there. And again, anything that the township was impacted by COVID. Again, very small categories. A largest part of our money was for our expenses and payroll. And again, we have a lot more expenses covered. The CARES Act was a per capita grant provided to the township based on population. So again, you know, there was many expenses in excess of that the township had as it relates to COVID. And no, we didn't buy, what did you say, 60 laptops? Our laptops have certain requirements to have in them, from docking stations and that type of thing. So I believe that was 15 laptops.
Okay, and who was it who decided how the money was spent?
Again, we had submitted to the county based on the criteria that the county asked us to. So again, staff compiled the expenses that we had as it related to COVID in answering the county's question.
Okay, so the board had no input.
The board received the same information, Mr. Hodges. Yes, we got the information on what was the money was allowed to be used for and what we were going to use the money for.
Okay, thank you very much.
You got it.
Mr.
Right, any
Martin,
other questions? Yes.
I won't say much, but I feel I must say we were informed. We were informed after the fact.
I disagree with that, but I mean, we've had this same discussion probably about 10 times. But we definitely were in the loop on the COVID grant money, what it could be used for and where it was used for within the township, within the criteria that the county allowed. So
I guess forward, maybe a way to add clarity would be that this should be discussed in a public meeting in the future. We do discuss all of our budgeted items, and if monies are received by the township outside of our approved budget, it makes sense to have that in a public meeting so the public's aware as we talk about everything else, purchases and whatnot, and have the board vote and have public opportunity to be aware of these new additions to the budget as well as the expenses
Yeah. Commissioner Kelly made my point, maybe better in more detail. The BOC did not review where the money would be spent at a BOC meeting. That's my point.
Thank you for your point. Both of you, I believe we did talk about it at a BOC meeting, but I'd have to go through my notes, but I know we were all aware of how that money was going to be spent and where. So, but certainly with the new COVID grant money coming available, if there's more information that would be helpful to provide, we can certainly work towards gathering that information and disseminating it as the group sees fit. Okay, any other questions?
No other comments in the chat.
All right, thank you, Tracy. And I'll leave it open for a minute or two if there's anybody on the phone who has a comment or a question for courtesy of the floor. Okay, I'd like to note that our invoices and purchasing requisitions have been reviewed by our township manager and our director of finance. We do need a motion this evening to authorize that our checks be issued to pay our bills as tabulated. Do I hear said motion?
I want to ask a question before I'll be happy to make that motion. Just my question would be for Renee. I noticed in our invoice packet there was an invoice for rent at the Roma building for April, and my understanding that we moved out at the end of March.
Our lease is through April.
It was my understanding when we had the building renovations that it was a 1-year lease, that it would be month to month after that.
No, our lease ends April of the end of this month.
I was not aware of that. That's different than the information that was, we all along had a January target date to move out of the building. And obviously with COVID and everything else, we've been delayed, but I'll have to go back through my notes. So I will make a motion to approve at this point.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Walk. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
The motion is what's the motion for again?
To pay our bills as tabulated.
Absolutely. Okay.
Commissioner Walk,
Yes.
Commissioner Seton,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes, motion carries. We have no executive session planned for this evening. I do need a motion for adjournment, please.
Before we do that, may I make one more suggestion, or I guess request? I routinely go through the invoice list that comes with our packet, and I go through and select certain ones to email to Renee to ask her to send to me to review because are not available for us. I would like to ask Renee to include all of the invoices in our packet for review so that I don't have to go through this process of asking every packet and waiting till they come in. And I know it's extra work on the staff on a busy meeting week. And there are times that I don't get the invoices in time because they're busy doing other tasks. So I believe it would be better to streamline for all of us to have them available in our packet. So I don't know if I need to make a motion or just we can discuss this with the board.
We do get the cash disbursement journal.
No, I'm asking for the invoices.
I think we talked about this at numerous meetings. I mean, Renee, I'm not sure how much work this is for staff. If it's, I don't have a problem if it's not tons of work. I mean, we get the disbursement journal, which lists every invoice, the amount, what account it came from. I'm good with that. I don't know. Diane, I thought you were fine with just picking one or two that you wanted to critique. Now you want to see every single one of them?
As I said, it's a process for me to have to go through and wait for the agenda to come out. Then I have to go through and email them to Renee, who then has to turn that over to a staff member. And there are times it doesn't, the information doesn't make it back to me in time for our meeting to even review them. this is taxpayer money. And I've been doing this for over a year and a few months now. I think it would streamline the process and all of us would have access to them without having to go through this request every single time.
Just as a point of matter, it doesn't streamline the process for us at all, whether we send one or all. Our invoices, as I've said on multiple occasions, are attached into our content management system, which runs along with the vendors. So we just can't, again, it doesn't run out invoices in the order in which the disbursements journal is written, because those invoices get attached. So we essentially take up more network space because we have to scan them all separately outside of our content management system. So, so again, it's the pleasure of the board. The disbursement journal indicates the check amount, the line item that it was charged to, the vendor, that the total of the check. So, so again, it's the pleasure of the board.
I honestly, I'm fine with the disbursement journal. Diane, I was always fine with the fact that you felt it to be a learning curve to learn how to do all this, but knowing the amount of work that's involved with it, I come back to, I think it's micromanaging so much, staff, that's what staff's duty is, to do this. I mean, we have the opportunity to look at the invoices, but if it's the pleasure of the board to have them provide every single invoice, so be it. I just think it's really, it certainly doesn't show faith in staff, that's for sure, but I'm fine with whatever.
I want to comment on that. This is not about faith or wanting to micromanage. Having reviewed other townships, Bethlehem Township puts all of their invoices in their entirety in their agenda packet for the public. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking as a commissioner who's, first of all, on the finance committee, and secondly, every week we're approving hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money. I personally am a numbers person and would prefer to see what we're voting on. So that's been the reason why I've done this from the start. I've learned an awful lot about how the township works and would like to continue to do that.
I don't think a motion's necessary, but Renee, I mean, I'm fine with it. It doesn't matter to me. I don't need to see every single invoice. If I have a question from the disbursement journal, I'll ask for that particular invoice. But if you're printing them out for one, you might as well just print them out for everybody.
Well, and by printing, I don't mean paper. They can just be attached in the digital format.
Yeah, I don't need them personally. I'm not going to read it.
My comment's more general. I know this is something that Commissioner Kelly has taken on with a great interest. My comment's more general. When it comes to South Whitehall Township finances, and Commissioner Kelly and I are on the, assigned to the finance committee. If we ask for financial information, in general, we would like to receive the information. And I'll just leave it at that. To me, financial information is a special class of information. It's the heart and soul of the township operation. Diane Kelly's, it looks like, why do you need those invoices? But it goes to what she just said. She understands the township operation better by having that information. And I feel the same way. I ask for certain information, and sometimes it's not available, or there's been times with this board in the last year, I asked for some very basic information, and this board has said, oh no, you can't have that. So that's all I want to say about it. To me, if commissioners ask for financial information, then it ought to be available.
I said, Mike, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it.
Great, thank you very much.
So before we close tonight, something a little bit disturbed me this evening, and when we talked about the COVID-19 relief funds, we kind of advertised the names of the businesses, and I felt a little bit uncomfortable with that. And I'm wondering if there is a way that those businesses that are asking for relief or some funds could not be publicly advertised. I just think that it might be a little bit uncomfortable for those people. I don't know if we can do that, if we cannot do that. I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but.
Well, I guess I would disagree in the sense that it is actually taxpayer dollars that we're using. It wasn't COVID grant money that came out of the Lehigh County grant. It's from our Fiscal Stability Fund. In my opinion, there's no shame in a business asking. We put a program out there and we're very happy to help them. And it's a boost, and I hope it creates more business for them, that they're working hard to survive in this climate of COVID and economic challenges. So that's my view on it.
Okay. Any other views from the commissioners? Just curious. Or is it just me? That's fine. It's just me. That's okay.
Joe, I think this is kind of a unique situation because it is a special fund. It's, it is coming from the township and it is from the taxpayer fund. So it's a little bit unique, and in a different situation, I could definitely agree that, that information may be, now there is information that is confidential, that needs to stay confidential from those businesses, like anything with tax related, that kind of stuff, but that they provided to get the grant. But as far as their name, I'm not sure we could necessarily not provide that. Okay. Unfortunately, I see your point though. It makes sense, and in normal situations, I agree 100%. But I think because of the source of these funds, it puts it in a little bit different situation.
And we certainly didn't release any of their, as Morgan spoke, confidential or other information that obviously was provided to the chamber to get this record. Again, I'll stress that I hope people who saw those names on the screen tonight will frequent these businesses who are invested in South Whitehall and were partnered with us to help stay afloat during these difficult economic times.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Absolutely.
Motion on the floor from Commissioner Seton. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Everybody have a lovely evening. Enjoy this beautiful spring weather. Have a good night.